It's over for President Akufo-Addo as John Mahama is sworn in on Tuesday. What are your highlights in his last address on the state of the nation? What kind of president has Akufo-Addo been to you? Has he damaged the value and brand of the national honors as his critics assert? So who among the 78 honorees is undeserving of the award? Will the inauguration of the 9th Parliament be smooth and peaceful, regardless what the court will say this morning about the 4 disputed constituency results? Or we are going to have a repeat of 7th January 2021. What are your expectations of the John Mahama administration? He says it is time for legacy. But how does he intend to do that in an economy he says is broke? Akufo-Addo says it is not broke. Yes, it is heavily debt-burdened. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. I'll be right back to introduce my stellar guests for today's special edition, the first in 2025. We'll be right back. Welcome. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. This is your first edition for 2025. And this is the show that you have been very expectant of. A number of people. Ansaki says this panel is wonderful. Medasi. Hanan Confidence Abdul says, Newsfile, an empowering 10. Thank you for the assemblage of these beautiful and powerful female voices. Today's show is a celebration of brilliance, balance, and bold perspectives. Christabel Dazi of the World Bank says, excellent way to start the new year. Solid panelists. We can do it if we want to. Representation matters. Messi Ejabeng of the Alliance for Women in the Media says that this is lit. Such skill, talents, brains, and width. And Yaira Akufo-Addo, Veronica, says a bold, diligent, she says she loves this. And she is a bold, diligent lawyer. My University of Ghana English course mates and senior at the bar. She joins thought leaders like Noam Fallon and many who are super excited about today's edition. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Once again, welcome. And my guests are from my extreme lefts. Dr. Esther Ofeya-Boaje is chair of the Integrated Social Development Center, ISODEC. Many of you would have associated her with those who sort of pay the purse for a lot of civil society work to go on in Ghana. By her is the Honorable Fatima Abubakar, who is Minister for Information and spokesperson for the transition team that's on the government side. And right by me is Joyce Bawa Mokhtari. She's a lawyer, she's special aide and spokesperson for the John Mahama 2024. Joining us via Zoom, Professor Akosua Adomako Ampofo, Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, and Dr. Angela Dramina-Boaje, Executive Director, the ARC Foundation, and Chairperson of the Civic Initiative. civic initiative. They played a very instrumental role in getting your presidential candidates to pledge to peace in the elections. Ladies, good morning, and thank you so much for making time to join us on Newsfile.
Good morning, Samson.
Right. So let's perhaps begin briefly from Cantonment. It's been such a bad news, as the president said when he gave his speech. He said, "I am deeply saddened by the devastating fire at Cantonment Market, which took place yesterday and has left many traders and their livelihoods in ruins. Government stands with you and will work with relevant agencies to ascertain the causes of the fire and to provide the needed support." That is very important. As we understand, more than 7,000 shops have been destroyed and over 30,000 traders have been affected. This appears to be repeating too often. December 15, 2020, it happened. November 29, 2022, it happened. September 17, 2023, there was fire there. And now January 2, 2025. So let me begin with Dr. Akufo-Addo. What do you say about what is happening and what can be done about this to avoid this repeat?
Thank you very much, Samson, for having me. Good morning to your august listeners and a happy new year. The matter of the Cantonment Market is indeed devastating, to use the president's words. But the sad thing is that, like you said, it's a phenomenon that's repeating itself, which means that there's something we are not doing right. Fires in markets. It's as if we rush in and then it blows over. We don't take sustained initiatives to prevent, manage, and rehabilitate those to whom it happens. Indeed, we should be able to prevent these things from happening, because these markets are places where a lot of people, particularly women, run their lives from.
That's right.
They have made heavy investments. They have put in their life savings. That's where they start their day, spend the most of their day, and that kind of thing. What are the factors that bring about these fires? Is it about preventive education? Is it about readiness? Is it about letting people be aware of the dangers that they are in, the things that bring about fires, and what can happen? Is it about the infrastructure, the electrical setup of our markets, and so on? The question, okay, immediately, we are thinking about immediate reliefs, because you can't start a new year with all of your investments bent up. So what is our emergency response, our shock response? Not on little reliefs, but on a large scale that will stabilize a person and, give them prospects for going forward in terms of giving them the resources that they need to set up. Beyond that, at the personal level, we're also thinking about what we are doing around insurance, people's attitudes and understanding of insurance for such events. Having said that, the question I have in my mind, beyond a responsive shock response strategy that will kick in immediately, is what our local authorities are doing, because markets are the business of local authorities, and also the availability of fire service support within our various localities and quickly assigned to the markets or rushing into the markets to do that. The issue of capacity, properly capacitating our fire services and also giving them the resources that they need to be able to respond. So there are a lot of questions in my mind about how we can do this and do this differently, and how not to go to sleep after this one.
Okay.
Because it's like we worry, we sympathize, and then after that, nothing earth-shaking, preventive happens. We need a sustained response. Again, coordination between the various entities that have responsibility for managing this, the fire service, NADMO, the local authorities, and all of these kinds of things. How do we strengthen coordination so that the response is immediate, effective, timely, and reassuring for Ghanaians?
Thank you. Immediate, effective, timely, and reassuring. And that's how there ought to be the shock response to this. And beyond now, we must not lift our foot from the ball on this issue. Now, Fatima, I'm sure the president says this is devastating. I'm sure, like him, you would have seen some of the affected women and men in the marketplace. It's heart-wrenching. You hear them, some of them, they can't even cry. They are trying to cry.
First of all, Samson, let me say Happy New Year to you, to Dr. Akufo-Addo and my sister Joyce, and also to your cherished viewers and listeners as well. In fact, I was so sad by this incident because during my days at the University of Ghana, I was a frequent patron of Kantamanto every Saturday morning. And when we talk about the numbers, and you are not someone who has been there, sometimes it sounds abstract. Mm-hmm. But the figures that you put out, I believe, are correct, of 30,000 traders. Mm-hmm. We are talking about 30,000 families, breadwinners, single parents, people who have nothing else apart from whatever they had at Kantamanto that they cannot salvage. And even some patrons of the market who go to buy and go and resell at other places across the country. It should tell you that the impact of what has happened at Kantamanto is unimaginable. And for most people who sell there, that is all they have. After what they've lost from here, they have nowhere else to go. So it is my prayer that there will be an urgent intervention to see how best we can restore livelihood at the place. But Dr. Akufo-Addo raised a very important issue about how we can forestall some of these market fires. You remember the Millennium Challenge Compact 2, the MIDA Compact 2. It included some programs to rewire some of the markets across the country. I believe it's a step that we can further expand, even without international support, to make sure some of these incidents, if they are not arson, because of the nature of incident and the pain, all sorts of allegations have been thrown out there. But for an official, I am in no position to go with speculations until such a time that the fire service we have today, which has a forensic laboratory, is able to come out with some probable
The public relations officer, Alex Kinneti, says that, quote, we suspect electrical faults, but there are also indications that this could have been a deliberate act. An investigation is ongoing to establish the facts. Absolutely.
So it's my prayer that when the findings are out, we will see how best a successive government or the incoming government will see how to restore livelihoods there and make sure such an incident does not occur.
Right. Before we hear from Joyce, let's listen to some of the affected traders.
The effect, the impact, the ripple impact of this whole thing, the situation is dire on them. So they are pleading with government to come to their aid. Let's any attitude or more Ghana Hano. Say fine. And yes, in a moment the attitude, and in the num is Sumasi, and in the Abia Sono, your GD say, and yes, sanity. But I say, a pamo, a half pamo, because your baby are more ye demoja, and I ain't Ghana for no, so no, your baby are your toy, and baby a dear. Because more you are Ghana have a breed, but Okwa was anybody don't send you gumo, but it can't amount to any patchy woman in any packet. Swati asio because population we for long short to see na hwe megu a metima ka cho say about 50% na bi omu okunu 85 ni nyina ni kunu kantamanto na etete wo mo beto mu kura nkola 2 ne 3 but e bia mo wan say bia mo besi amo acha manipa mo emwa because force niema ne enton wo mu because an edi adwa wo table so aha no kura hende Ghana na di ura kanta ha utimi de ball bra what I say utimi de ball bra so say ne ete no but the pastor ebetimi asi but ye ntimi nka se fan wo benten ana se ni pastor asi ene ye de but the wi so obi anim ne ho ene mpanifo
say die ye need da koto moja mu papa esansa asama atsoye no ye ni agina ha nyina matan ye nyina agina ha nyina matan obi ani dwetire akuafo pa ewo mu na afia so na hwese nkola suku abra so na maye oye na say ye hu se Ghana ha ye ni agya esansa obi asi ha ebebusa ye se die mpo na atomo abatso ana aduru asabre nko mu nyina wa ha opanyimu bie ni ho aba ha bebu sayense menua manom da ba ne sempo ye hu se dampan ne ye de ni asem bia ebeka onipa biala wotimi hwe nyankopon anim ade sa oye ne kese wi aba poyense no ye ni bie ye nkuta bie ye bransa ne yensaka ye na omo de sa de we ye die abra omo wo bie sa abra omo tete omo dan ni table ho enum ti ewi salada kase na yen ye mo bosei eno ma yensa
22 years. Welcome to God Ben 12 years ago. The NDC helped us, but we help ourselves too, and that's why we are doing that. We know the government, the MPP or the NDC or whatever will be in power that will help us. But we want to help because the saying is helping help those who help themselves. So we are helping ourselves, and we don't expect. We know the economy cannot cater for everything. The last time it happened, the NDC gave everybody 300 Ghana cedis a gift, and there was a mass law give us a loan, and we know it. We are looking for it. We are not saying if they come up to say, okay, we will help you build the share, or even the cost of the share we are going to take up. We say we are not going to reject it, but we simply want to help ourselves.
All right, so one of the chairmen of the associations, various associations at the Cantonment Market there, speaking about how 12 years ago this happened and they got support from government, and the woman before her was complaining that's the day after the fire that they had not been visited by any official of state, and that what had happened, there were widows, there were orphans and many others who make their livelihood, who eke out a life from that place. And so what has happened to them is devastating. And before that, you had a gentleman who also suggested they have some suspicions that there's an intention to put up a mall at the place. And he insists that that should not happen and their livelihoods be taken away from them. Over 7,000 shops destroyed and over 30,000 people affected. Joyce.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, ladies, and good morning, Samson. Happy New Year to everybody, and we thank God for making it possible for us all to come in here on such a positive note. I want to say a very big thank you to each and every member of the National Democratic Congress, to the President-elect, and to all our leaders who've led us to battle and to such a successful end of that campaign. So thank you, everybody, and may God actually help us to govern in ways that will be pleasing to the eyes and minds of the good people of Ghana who have made this win possible. You know, Samson, I watched these scenes a few days ago. It actually really broke my heart. And you know, like Fatima said, for all of us young children whose mothers literally spent many days and hours traversing these markets, it brings it actually home to you in ways that you cannot even imagine. It is heart-wrenching, really, really sad to watch the spectacle. And you see, it also speaks to how our very underprivileged in our society are left, you know, to wallow in such squalor, to live in this market for all these years, you know. And remember that that particular catchment area, that enclave, is actually a demarcated railway section of our country, you know. Right. And for years, this place has been heavily populated, not even just by displaced persons, if you know what I mean. These are regular, ordinary members of our society who eke out a living, literally day in, day out. It is a market that literally never sleeps. And believe you me, those stalls are also homes to these people. And you listen to a gentleman who spoke about all the children who were born, bred, and raised in this environment. You know, these are members of our society that it appears that through all the pomp and pageantry, through all the partisanship and all the political conversations, we have literally forgotten that we ought to focus on uplifting them. You know, there's been this plan for years to enhance and modernize our markets. It's been going on for a while, but I think it is a process that is actually not as quick as it should be. You know what I mean? I think that this actually calls for a very, 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 very good debate. And I hope that Parliament will take this very seriously. Everybody has spoken about the devastation, spoken about how tragic this is, about the livelihoods that are lost, about, of course, the fact that, look, clearly there can be no insurance of any of these things. You and I know the processes that lead up to being able to insure your wares. It must actually be a proper structure. It must be in a legitimately designated marketplace. It must also be a lawfully designated area for such business to thrive. So you and I know that no insurance will even go there and insure any of these businesses. I believe a lot of monies have been lost because most of these people actually spoke about how they no longer go to the banks because they don't trust the banking system anymore. You heard the gentleman speak about how bad the economy is and the fact that this is all their lives.
Some had actually left their monies in their shops and they were bent.
I saw notes that were totally bent out. You can't tell what the quantum really is. We can't even begin to actually calculate what has been lost in this inferno. My heart goes out to the many young children who have now been left with no shelter. Imagine what facilities you need even to rehouse and resettle these numbers that we've seen. I pray that our leaders will take this as a wake-up call, that immediately from here, something ought to be done beyond paying lip service to what is required. You know, Samson, it is why when my sister mentioned the Millennium Compact, I thought to myself, yes, it brings back memories about the PDS issue and how those monies were literally siphoned away by persons who should know better. It is for these reasons that Ghanaians went to the polls to elect a new leadership. And I pray that we don't let people down. Expectations are very high. I told my boss a few days ago that this must actually be the model for his conversations around enhancing markets in Ghana. If it means going back to the drawing boards, if it means redemarcating the area, to be certain that these are portions of this land that we intend to designate at sustainable markets, then certainly so be it, so that we can start to provide something that will augment, at least soften the hardships on these people.
Talking about the compact, we lost it, and President-elect has been saying that he's making attempts to see if we can get it back to assist. So you're hopeful?
Yes, very hopeful. You know, fortunately, I was actually in the meetings with the Undersecretary of State in the United States of America, where these conversations took place. They've actually made some requests. They want some guidelines to be taken. They want to look at the power sector and how we can at least, you know, reposition. Don't forget that all these power distribution companies now are literally very weak. You know the challenges with the Electricity Corporation of Ghana. You know the challenges with the power supply system and all of that. Even the debt owed to the independent power producers.
We'll come to speak about the energy sector.
Absolutely. So, yes, there's a very positive outlook. And, you know, once there's a new government in place, new conversations are taking place.
All right.
And you heard the U.S. ambassador in Ghana to speak very hopefully about the fact that when you judge by the challenges we have with power distribution, look at the wiring in that place.
Right.
So that, you know, beyond arson, beyond the suspicions, chances are this could actually just be something that triggered it. And so it happened in the Ashanti region, if you remember. And it's happened across the country over the years. My heart goes out to all of these people. And I
Quick question to you, and same will go to Fatima, because the president says that they would look at providing the needed support. We would like you to explain what needed support is, Fatima. And also, Joyce, the president-elect has indicated that there's a team that is supposed to, check what is going on. So he will do what with that? Yes, so beginning with you, Joyce. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Look, I know that Mr. Mahama has always been very concerned about our market structures across the country. I know that every effort was made to improve these markets and to enhance them. I know that what has happened here happened in Makola not too long ago. We saw similar scenes, except I think the devastation was not really as widespread as this one is. I mean, look at this is a complete slum. It just cries for the fact this is not sustainable on any level, that you cannot continue to allow people to exist in this very, harrowing manner in these circumstances. I have personally spoken to Mr. Mahama, and I know that this is a matter very close to his heart. Don't forget that Mrs. Mahama herself actually had shops in these markets, some of them, Makola and Malata, for example, and has remained very closely associated with these environments. He has assured us of one thing, that the market enhancement projects will start immediately. And the team is supposed to actually go on a reconnaissance, actually, to visit these environments and find out just what we can do, because they're also heavily populated.
That's right.
Building within persons who are already in existence is not always easy. But these days, we have also experts who know how to even develop these very busy environments, even while the people still go about their normal business. I know the team will come out with a very good report. I know that Katamanto will probably kickstart his journey towards leading the country into at least some momentary hopefulness. And I believe that people are expectant and looking forward. I mean, 12 years ago, they were given 300 Ghana cedis. I mean, 12 years later, 300 Ghana cedis, it sounds like a pittance.
But that was money at the time.
At the time, exactly. So I think that beyond giving them some stipends and maybe some shelter, I believe that the long-term thing really is to reconstruct.
And the leader we heard has a posture that is very commendable.
I like that too, yes.
He kept repeating that they want to help themselves.
Yes.
Right. So Fatima, yes.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to clear two key issues. One has to do with the assertion that no government official has been there. I am reliably informed that the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Honorable Nikwate Titus Glover, has been there. The Accra Mayor, Madam Elizabeth Saki, has also been there.
I suppose the time she was speaking, the woman, affected woman was speaking, they had not been there.
Okay.
Right.
The other issue also has to do with the rewiring of some selected markets. It has nothing to do with PDS. So I don't even know how the conversation veered in that direction.
The reference was that the compact
I was saying that the Compact 2 had several components.
Okay.
One which has to do with the reorganization of our power distribution system, that is PDS.
That's the one we have lost.
Yes, but there were other components which have to do with rebifurcation, rewiring of some selected markets, building of some of the bulk supply points that went through. So those are relevant to this conversation, and I didn't know we would be talking about power distribution challenges.
So those continue to exist?
Yes.
Those are not affected?
Rewiring of some selected markets in Accra and Tamale actually happened, and I believe if you look at the breakdown of the compact, that will show.
All right.
But in terms of supports that the market, I'm talking about in terms of quantum or nature of support that these markets may require. One has to do with funding. Capital is gone. People have lost everything. So when they talk about support, I know already some of them have gone ahead to buy wood and roofing sheets to build their sheds back, just as the man.
So when the president said needed support to them, it will include money?
I think substantially they will be talking about capital. But beyond capital or recapitalization.
I'm not talking about they, I'm talking about the president. He says they will be giving the needed support.
Of course, previously. In fact, we've had a very good relationship with traders in this country. Even beyond market fires, go and look at the CABAS, the components that the Ghana Enterprises Agency and other selected agencies under the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Trade Industry did in times of difficulty to support traders recapitalize. But also when there are speculations about wiring, about fire outbreaks due to gas, among others, I think it is also important that we give the necessary public education on how to manage some of these incidents. I believe first aid is important. If the fire starts somewhere and someone has access to fire extinguishers or other products that will be able to stop the initial fires, I don't think it will get to this extent. And also to talk about the preparedness of the Ghana Fire Service. This government, President Akufo-Addo led government, has done so much when it comes to the Ghana Fire Service. And one has to do with capacity. By January 2017, the capacity of the fire service in terms of personnel was just 7,000 men across the country. Now we have recruited 8,000, additional 8,000. And on record, if you check the capacity of the Ghana National Fire Service, they have 15,000 personnel.
So there should be one fire station at this market?
I believe so. We have established 24 fire posts since 2017. But when some of these incidents happen and you know some flashpoints, it is very important that some of these facilities are extended to them. So I just wanted to clear the impression as if there is no recognition of the threats of fires and no steps taken. But I am speaking to the facts as they exist at the Ghana National Fire.
Yeah, but the question someone will ask is, if you have done this expansion, then we shouldn't see the fires destroy the markets the way they do. Like the president said, everything has been brought to ruins at this place.
Samson, fires are generally classified as being part of disasters. In fact, the almighty United States of America, they have been a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to fires. It doesn't mean there are no infrastructure in place. There can be continuous effort to improve what exists. But I'm saying sometimes disasters happen unannounced. So if there is education on early management, if there is funding to recapitalize and see how the infrastructure there can be improved to make it more accessible. Because there are times that fire personnel will go to a location with their fire tenders and all the resources they may have. But access may be such a challenge that by the time they reach the flash points, it is too late and not much can be salvaged.
Thank you very much.
Very quickly, and I'm sure maybe my sister Fatima probably hasn't followed this particular incident. To be honest, it took forever even to get a fire tender to the scene. Even the very first one appeared, they didn't have any water. Don't forget that this is a whole logistical process, and we don't want to discuss value chains here. That's a whole technological conversation. And the crowds in that place, the sheer numbers, even if you had 10 fire tenders, access will be a challenge. That's a different conversation. But I believe that on the first call, even when the fire tenders got there, you know what happened. And I'm sure you have footage of what happened. You know, look, let's not try to defend the indefensible. I think that we've moved on from there. And Ghanaians have told this government that you have not been too sensitive to our plight. I don't want us to reduce the conversation to who did what and who didn't do what. President Akufo-Addo himself yesterday admitted that he was helpless. So let's just leave it there and maybe commiserate with the people and hope that the new administration will take market improvements very seriously. That will also include that logistical incapabilities of the fire tenders getting access. Remember that in these places, normally there are water things in the underground. And so when the fire tenders get there, they get the water right from there. I studied these things, so I know that these are not circumstances that even allow for access, one. Two, we don't even have the infrastructure, the requisite way in which a proper fire tender can approach such a crowded environment and even work. So beyond education and advocacy, the future is that there must be quick reforms. Samson, I even propose that we even now need regulations to regulate some of these markets. Note that some of the modern markets in Makola and other places have very clear guidelines, size, shape, where you can build, where you can't build. They even have drainage systems, they have restroom facilities, and access is critical. There be clearly delineated areas where cars can move in when there's an emergency, ambulances can
Like Dr. Feabaji said, this is the responsibility of the local assemblies.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, let me go to Dr. Angela Dwamnabwaji. Thank you for joining us. But before that, let's hear what the president said again. I'm getting information that the major problem, apart from the recruitment being good, 8,000 or so extra, you have problems with the tenders. and that a good number of them are broken down. Again, issues of maintenance. But let's hear the president.
I want to put on record that I'm deeply saddened by the devastating fire at Kantamanto Market, which took place yesterday, and has left many traders and their livelihoods in ruins. My thoughts and prayers are with those affected, and I extend heartfelt sympathies to the hard-working traders who have lost their goods and investments. Government stands with you and will work with relevant agencies to ascertain the causes of the fire and to provide the needed support. As a nation that is united in compassion and solidarity to help those who have suffered losses. Together, we can extend a helping hand to our fellow Ghanaians in need during this challenging time.
So beyond the issues of compassion and feeling as he feels, because you definitely can't avoid feeling the way he feels about what has happened to these men and women, really. Doc, how do you expect that the help, in what form should it come? Let's hear you after we hear your words of sympathy to them.
Well, thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to all my sisters in the studio and Prof outside, and Happy New Year to Ghana. We've come far. I think for me, all the words of sympathy and compassion and so on have been uttered, and rightly so. It's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking to see particularly women and many men also lose their livelihoods in this way. But the sad thing for me is the repetition. Okay, it means as a country we are not learning in some aspects, and we are not applying even the things that we're supposed to have learned from these incidents to our lives. And that's something that needs to be really addressed going forward. Now, one of the things that intrigues me is, why do we appear to have fires, increasing fires around the holiday season and the new year? Okay, so sometimes it really, I just don't get it. We do understand the basics, that people get excited, people will leave their electric gadgets on, maybe gas fires and so on and so forth. So that's a whole part of it. But why is it that, because it has happened over and over, we have not been able to learn the lessons and to be able to integrate these lessons into how we manage our markets and other facilities? Okay. The other thing is the fact that even when the fire service gets into it and they give us the information that they're going to come back with whatever they find, we never appear to get that information back. Okay, so I'm wondering, are there issues about investigative capacities for the fire service, so we get some kind of data, information that helps us to integrate these things into our planning going forward? I think we need to look at that, because people are suspecting arson. It may be out of electric fires, whatever it is. But we do need to strengthen investigative capacities and feedback that informs policy and planning. Otherwise, I can bet you next year, January, another big fire is going to happen in some market or the other. We've talked about modernization of markets and so on. I know government after government have had these in their manifestos and so on and so forth. I think we need to start taking some of these things seriously, because at a certain point, we'll be looking at whether we need to be a manifesto-driven country or a national development plan-driven country. Okay, so I'm not so much interested in what the manifestos say about market modernization, but what the plan for this country would be going forward, irrespective of who is in power.
Talking about modernization or modernizing markets, they have some suspicions that perhaps, and it's so wild, that this place was touched for the purposes of setting up a mall. How does a government navigate that situation and see a day after they have taken over their shirts and beginning to do their own reconstruction somewhat?
Yes, I mean, Ghana, there are many conspiracy theories and many suspicions, and sometimes these suspicions are even fueled by our severe partisanship, okay? So I don't really know what to say to a government or an incoming government about how do you navigate these kinds of questions that people have on their minds, apart from providing them with information, okay? Providing them with the kind of education that helps them to keep safe and information as to how we go forward, because this has already happened. And ensuring that you are not going to do things that will bring the suspicions to come to pass. Okay, because we are looking at a population, a whole part of our population that have been in the informal sector and have contributed so much to our economies and our families. Ghana didn't crash because a lot of the money from these places were not in the formal system. That is something we need to also realize, okay? So that it is important for us not to make their suspicions come to pass, that some rich people are trying to take over. That's why this is happening. But on support, this is where the issue of quick thinking and coordination comes in. Most of my life, I've been a crisis responder. So when I see this, my crisis response thinking comes into, immediately. And this must be done by coordinating what needs to be done. Coordination is something that Ghana needs to grasp, because it goes to the very heart of our policy planning, implementation, and even feedback and evaluation. What do we do immediately? By now, all the relevant agencies, state, local government, should be put into a kind of coordinated framework to provide the sources, the sources of grants, the sources of long-term financing, the sources of help. People would have mental health issues coming from this. Where are we going to draw from the health sector? I heard
one of the traders, a man who said he's been doing this for all his life there, and he has a wife and 5 daughters. That's what he said.
Right.
And he said he had about 30,000 also in the shop, and it's bent. So he didn't know where he was going from that place.
Exactly. But you see, the resilience of a people is shown when you have leadership in coordination, because right here are the answers. Already they're thinking we have enough resources internally to respond to our own crisis. We want to help ourselves, but we need help. So it means that we need to coordinate the help. We need to coordinate the help for the counseling, the crisis part. We need to coordinate the financial support part for the long term. If there are issues around insurance, for example, and if there are issues around immediate support. And this has to come by the leadership that we get in terms of coordinating. I know we're in a tricky place, with the transition team and the, government come, government go place. But still, there's still a government in power. And I would think that it would even be a good opportunity to invite even other people from the other side to help in this work almost immediately.
Right.
We can do it.
Thank you. So, Professor Akufo-Addo Makwanpo for joining us. Thank you so very much, Prof. And Angie and your friends in the studio, everybody is talking about immediate support. I think it's Dr. Ofe-Aboagye who uses the expression, is a shock response. But what do you think can happen in the long term, particularly at a place where it does appear that the government ought not have allowed the market to have, sprout up at this place? So if you are going to go forward, how do you do that? Perhaps a relocation, and they will not be interested in that also.
Samson, good morning. A productive new year. I can't say happy, given the news that we are talking about at the moment, the catastrophe really that has happened in the market. But a productive new year to you, to my sisters in the studio, my sister Angela online, and as Ghanaians will say, to cherished listeners and viewers. This question that you have asked, Samson, I think it really, we can distill it down to one of the major challenges we have in this nation, which is planning and applying our regulations. Because we are a country that has wonderful laws, we have regulations, we have policies, and yet we don't apply them. And so this level of lawlessness, right? I'm sure all of us, from the way people drive, from the sense of entitlement that big men and women have on the streets, taking over people's properties, students in the exam room, pastors and bishops who exploit in their congregations. We can go on and on and on. And so unless we deal with the root issues of who we are as a people, we're not going to fix this Kantamanto or other issues. And I've been around for a long time. I do not wish to be a cynic, but honestly, if all of us from our leadership down do not decide that we are going to, the NDC has been using the term reset. And I was asking myself, both as a government and as Ghanaians, if we want to reset, because I'm sure we all want a change, what are we resetting to? What are the factory settings that we really, really want? Do we want them? And, it's difficult to think of long-term solutions unless all of us decide we're going to do things differently. We've got a government, they have the opportunity to take the difficult decisions. Yes, as sisters have said in the studio, there has to be a coordinated effort, there has to be an immediate response. We have to show our humanity. We do that very well as Ghanaians. Angela was talking about crisis responses. We do that well, and then we go back to our old way. But we need an immediate crisis response now, all hands on deck. How can we help people? There will be a committee of inquiry, I'm sure. How did it happen? Was it arson? Was it not? Is it insurance? Is the wiring bad? What is it? And then the incoming government has the opportunity to put people in office who will actually do their jobs without fear or favor, who, if people need to be sacked, will sack them, who will evaluate them on their competencies, and whoever the buck stops with the markets is going to be charged with having terms of reference and actual things to do that will make sure that this doesn't happen again. You're going to start with the little things. And then you put in place mechanisms, not for just Kantamanto market, but for all our markets, because this happens too often. And not just our markets, we hear petrol station here, because people have cut corners. So wherever the buck stops with in the management of our markets, we've got district assemblies, we've got the AMA. What are they doing? What have they done? Who is supervising to make sure, who is checking to make sure that the person who is in charge has done what they've got to do? And again, we're a land without consequences. Somebody does something wrong, we hear the news, we don't hear what happens later on. Angela was talking about fire service, are told to do A, B, and C. We don't hear what happens. And that is the story with every catastrophe that happens, every hardship, every heartache. We hear the journal and the journalists, honestly, we don't do follow up with stories. We hear the story. We don't know what happens. So and so has been arrested. This person has gone to court. This person has been asked to do A, B, and C. Does it really happen? We don't know. And so it feeds into our cynicism that actually we're just being given these stories that Minister so-and-so and Director so-and-so is going to do this. This person has been arrested but doesn't follow through. We believe that it doesn't happen. So it's a hydra-headed monster that we are dealing with. But they say Rome was not built in a day. Ghana too cannot be built in a day. But if the people who are the office holders coming in now say that they want to reset, they have to ask themselves, reset to what? And they, the jargons are many: accountability, integrity. We want to see it. We want to see what exactly is it you're going to do, and can we measure you against what it is that you have promised to do? And in this case,
right, Prof. And Joyce says that she's been speaking to the president, and he knows that the president-elect is ready to make this the first test of how he's going to do the resetting agenda. We will see how it goes. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And the leaders are listening and watching because they do watch this show. So your advice will not be in vain. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And forgive us, those of you who have not come to terms with the fact that we have been doing Newsfile from 8 a.m. That is what we have been doing. And so you've missed an hour of very deep thinking, analysis of the Kantamanto fire disaster and what ought to be done by our guest, Fatimatu Abubakar, Angela Dwamna-Boaje, Professor Akufo-Addo Mpofo, Joyce Ba Muktari, and Esther Ofe Abuaje. Please stay on. We are going to the President's last State of the Nation address. His State of the Nation includes that this country is not broke. Really? That's the question you are asking. Let's hear the President on the state of the economy and bits of what he had to say. Then we come to our guests to begin to tell us their highlights and whether they agree with him or they do not agree with him.
The economy is rebounding strongly. Our fiscal position is more stable, and our debt sustainability has significantly improved. These developments have provided a solid foundation for sustained growth and development, ensuring that the sacrifices made by bondholders and other stakeholders will not be in vain, but rather the basis of Ghana's economic revival. Mr. Speaker, the country is not broke, as some propagandists want us to believe. We're handing over the country with gross international reserves of almost $8 billion United States dollars. This is more than the $6.2 billion United States dollars of gross international reserves my administration inherited in 2017. Economic growth. The noise will not shut out the statistics. And I intend to put the statistics on the record of Hansard, no matter the amount of noise. There can be no such arguments about the introduction of the free SHS and free TVET programs. Another policy that did not have universal approval when I sought to introduce it on coming into office. However, I believe this is one of the rare occasions on which you can use the word transformational without any danger of abusing the word. We have transformed education, and there can never be a reversal, of the fact that some 5.7 million young people have gained access to secondary education. Who would otherwise not have had the opportunity, but for free SHS and free TVET. Indeed, my administration has also prioritized technical and vocational education and training, TVET, establishing 34 new TVET institutions and upgrading 62 existing ones to equip our youth with 21st century skills. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that we were brave enough to have started the free SHS policy at the beginning of my first term and resisted the calls for a gradual introduction. I'm glad that we've removed from the Ghanaian mindset the belief that secondary school education is only for people from certain households and families. From 2020, when the first cohort of free senior high school candidates sat for the WACC, Ghana has consistently recorded over 50% of candidates scoring A1 to C6 in all 4 core subjects. This marks a stark improvement compared to the years prior, particularly the period when pass rates in core subjects were largely below 50%. The most important intervention is the Agenda 111 project we have embarked upon that aims to place a hospital in every district. Out of the 101 district hospitals and 2 psychiatric hospitals on the project list, there are 99 district and 2 psychiatric hospitals where contractors are deployed and work is in progress. I'd hoped that construction would be completed on all of them, but that, alas, was not to be. I'm pleased to report that on December 5th, I had the utmost pleasure to commission 3 of the district hospitals. Progress of works on the other 98 active sites range from 5% for sites whose work commenced recently to 95% at other sites. I'm hoping that the incoming Mahama administration will ensure that the project is completed to put our health infrastructure on a sound footing. Furthermore, we launched the National Ambulance Services Revitalization Program, increasing the number of ambulances from 55 barely functioning ambulances to over 300, ensuring timely emergency response and saving countless lives. No longer an assumption that we can make that our land will be safe and secure. Ghana, by the grace of God, remains the only country in the neighborhood that has not fallen victim to terrorist violence. It has taken a lot of concerted effort, and dare I say a lot of money, to enable us to protect our country from the ravages of the variety of terrorist groups.
Right, and that's the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He says that serving the Ghanaian people as president has been the greatest honor of my life. But do Ghanaians appreciate him as much? That is the question. Certainly, within the 8 years, has done a number of things, but for him, he put out what would be the highlights of his administration, solving chieftaincy, protracted chieftaincy matters in Dagbon, among others. The ambulances he speaks about. But we will fact check some of the highlights that he makes. On education, free SHS, on the energy sector, he says he inherited a doomsday economy. Is that true? Among other things. So let's begin the analysis, perhaps with Angela. What were your highlights?
I'm trying to, okay. Yes, so, okay, let me say this. A SONA, State of the Nation, I believe must be State of the Nation. So far, what we've been having is, I don't know whether we've developed it by tradition, is to have presidents actually touting the things that they have done. You know, highlighting the developments that they've been able to achieve, the infrastructure, security, all of those things. However, I would have wished that even if they highlighted some of the things they have done, they would actually let us understand where that leaves the state. Okay, so if you say, I've been able to do Agenda 111, I didn't complete it. We must situate it against the broader frame of the health sector so that you're able to tell us where that leaves the health sector. If you're looking at education, you're not touting only what you have done, but you're looking also at what the broader outlook is on education as you give the State of the Nation address. So I think I was a bit disappointed because I didn't quite hear the State of the Nation. I heard more of what I've been able to do under my administration. But I don't think it's only Akufo-Addo who has done that. I think it's something that has been happening, and I think we need to address that. If it's a State of the Nation, let it be a State of the Nation. Use other opportunities that are given to you as a president to address what you've been able to do, and there are many numerous opportunities for that.
Presidents or political leaders obviously don't develop the country with money from their own pocket. It's our own money.
Absolutely.
But when he does that, it's part of the State of the Nation. If he has improved the health sector by an Agenda 111 hospitals, which he's succeeded in commissioning 3, completed so far, and he's looking forward to Mahama to continue and complete the rest. And he's brought ambulances, he's done all of these things. It's part of the State of the Nation, is it not?
Yes, it's part of the State of the Nation, but it doesn't give you the full picture of the state of the nation or the sectors that you're addressing. And for me, that has always been sort of a problem for me, because I want to hear that this has been done, but this is within the wider framework of what is going on in this sector. So this is actually where the state is concerning education, health, social protection, whatever there are to speak about. And the second thing that I want to say when it comes to highlights, I mean, this is a president that's saying, Mayebi, okay, but appreciate me for what I've done. And I think it's good. It's troubling for some of us when we hear the way in which we take such partisan sides when it comes to some of these addresses, or even when it comes to evaluating what has happened in the country. Now, I in my circle of family, I have very strong NDC people and very strong NPP. And sometimes when I stand in the middle, I'm wondering, is it me or is it them? Why is it that they see everything in such stark black and white colors when it comes to the other side? And why is it that I don't see it like that? But that's the state in which we are in now when it comes to partisanship. Yes, baby, he couldn't finish everything. Yes, the people of Ghana have voted him out massively, but that still does not mean that he did not do something, he and his government. And I think we have to acknowledge it and also, assess them and use that as a backdrop for the incoming government. It's very, very important. So some of my highlights.
It is human nature, is it not, that you do 1,000 good, but you do one small wrong, and that might blight the whole thing you have done.
Absolutely. But then we have history to judge you. Posterity is there. After a while, we'll start writing these things up and we would know that maybe we haven't been fair. Okay, and we need to acknowledge that these things happen, and it won't just happen to Akufo-Addo, it will happen to the next government, the next government. But we can learn from these things. Look at Galamsey. I was expecting a concrete report on even what he tried to do with Galamsey, try and, inform the public on what you did with the military, what you did in trying to clean up waters. I was so disappointed about his report on Galamsey, but that is one of the most core issues we are having to deal with because it's an existential threat. It threatens us with ecocide. And so I was surprised at its treatment and the politicization of it, by the president. I was hoping he would even leave something for the next government to build on, assuming those were even good. There isn't enough time, but a few more highlights for me. The school feeding, the social protection.
The Galamsey matter, there are those who suggest he would have been better off not speaking about it at all, rather than what he said. Among other things, he says, I welcome the many loud converts to the fight against Galamsey that suddenly appeared in the run-up to the 2024 elections. And I pray that more and more of us get to embrace the need for the protection of our lands and water bodies. That's being cynical. That's looking at it with mischief, as if the fight, those who came up, spoke about it, were only after, his government, sort of the NPP not being successful. And then he spoke about how his party has lost seats, among others.
I mean, that's a lame duck excuse. I think it's sad because, from the statesman Akufo-Addo that, some of us knew, to a president who is reducing this particular very serious matter to a political game, I think it's very sad. Yes, wabeyebi, but on some of those core issues, he should have explained himself a little better, admitted the failures, and given some kind of a direction for the next government, if possible. But the way in which it was treated was really a bit shabby. And if you see that people were ready to, put their lives, in a sense, online for this Galamsey fight, and even get being imprisoned for it and so on, this is nothing to take lightly. So I know a lot of people would want to comment on Galamsey, so I want to move on quickly.
All right.
To the area of social protection and the widening of the net, NHIA, LEAP, capitation grants, school feeding. These are very good programs that have helped, to support the most vulnerable in our society and so on. Nobody can take away the fact that free SHS is a very core policy to this country. I mean, look at the Asian Tigers. They have moved their countries through education, deliberate, intentional educational policies that have lifted them out of poverty.
But Angela, is it accurate to suggest that all these students will not have had the opportunity of secondary education but for free SHS?
Not all, but many. So it's not surprising that even when Setepe, tried to talk about limiting it to day students, it was NDC youth who went after him. Many people have benefited from this, and for years to come, families will talk about SHS, but it's going to provide a long-term dividend. So this is where probably Akufo-Addo is going to get some respite from. When years to come, we can point to free SHS as having actually brought about some kind of transformation to our society. We are worried about the implementation, some of the issues, the knotty issues around quality, around sustainability, around how we can get other people involved who actually want to pay part of the costs. These are things we're all worried about, which the next government should take up. But I think that nobody can take this away from the Akufo-Addo government, that indeed lots of families who would otherwise not have been able to participate in this level of education, and the fact that it will have a certain impact on Ghana in the future to come, we can't take that away from him. But come to the other social protection policies like NHIA and so on. Sometimes I tend to think, and this is not just the NPP government, it cuts across again. Since these policies started, Those are the only social protection matters in this country. And they keep commenting on how they have increased, expanded, and so on. They forget sectors around mental health, around domestic violence that is ravaging our country, and the kind of systems and structures that do not work. They forget sectors around children, and the fact that our infrastructure on children is actually almost next to nothing. Apart from educating our children, when it comes to protection of children and so on, it's next to nothing. Why? Look at this case that happened when the child marriage issue came up. And that is just one of the many of such issues that happen in this country. To children who are not just the future, who are now. And it appears that we all swept it under the carpet, and that's the end of the matter. The Attorney General hasn't come back with his advice on going forward on child betrothal, nothing like that, and it's just going.
And that's part of the issue, very disturbing issue that Professor Akufo-Addo complained about, because the media touches and then we leave. We don't sustain. Follow up to ensure that we get to the end of the matter.
And when some of us try to follow up, we are not significant enough in terms of, our public clout.
Right.
So if they like, they will respond. If they don't like, they won't respond.
All right.
That's another thing.
Can I go around and come? Okay, economy briefly.
Go around. I know there's so much about the highlights, but
all right. So let me come to Fatih, and from Fatih I'll go to Prof. Your highlights. Certainly some good has happened.
Absolutely.
And like Angela says, on the opposite side, you heard Emmanuel Bois, right? They won't see anything that's right. How does that feel?
Okay, Samson, first of all, I must commend the president for performing his constitutional mandate, even after the expiration of his term. I think sometimes we don't celebrate our democracy enough. I know it takes a lot for successive government to go through this process. I was also very excited about the light and humorous aspect of the whole presentation, because the president is no stranger to the House, either as a member of parliament or as a president. So there are aspects, although I get the benefit of seeing even his presentation before
and yes, we hope
delivered.
We hope his aide-de-camp is doing well.
By the grace of God.
We understood sometime in the evening that he was responding to treatment in the hospital. And again, the media, we just have to take the lessons. The ethics cannot be compromised. This was not something that you should focus, zoom on and begin to show to the world. That was wrong. Yes.
Yes. So by the grace of God, the president was able to go before the August House to perform that mandate. Most importantly, I understand Dr. Dwamina's perspective. Individually and as organizations, I believe we have our own highlights and expectations of what we want to hear from the president. But mind you, the opportunity to present the message on this on the state of the nation is such that you may not be able to capture everything. So in the mind, like I'm speaking from the perspective of a drafter and understanding the thinking of the president, to say that successive every single year he presents SONA. There are times you'll be thinking that some issues or some aspects of the presentation have been highlighted in previous presentations enough, and there is no need to be repetitive. There are some other issues that are also priorities among priorities that are of public interest, to the extent that they are continuous development or ongoing development. For instance, if there is a presentation of such nature and economic issues are always on the table, you cannot escape that. I was also excited about the fact that His Excellency the President took the time to bring comparative data of what he received in January 2017 and what he is leaving on January 2025. I think that is so important because we always say that to whom much is given, much is expected. I believe people had expectations in the context of what is available. And the President came and said, with what I was given, this is what I was able to achieve. I may not have achieved everything. And I think we also need to commend him for aspects that, like the Boko conflict. The President, I know personally that he was committed to doing everything. There are unresolved...
The conflict has only gotten worse.
Yes, and I am saying that regrettably, it is not everything that we were able to do. And it is important that when necessary, some admissions are made and also to highlight the issues so that the incoming government will take it up and know that these are, if there are consensus or not, these are issues that the other side would have wished to continue.
Right.
But let me come to the specifics. And especially because of Dr. Jamila's presentation, I would like to start with health, come to education, and then the economy.
And be brief about them.
As much as I can. You know, we discussed the conversations about this government's investment in healthcare, and it appears as if everything is Agenda 111. But the Agenda 111 project started after COVID-19. From the promise to the planning to the execution, all started after COVID-19. And this was the case because when we were faced with a global pandemic, that is when the real size or the reality of our health sector and its ability to absorb some of these unexpected crises came to the attention of everybody.
And what you do is leave hospitals that were in the progress, some about to be completed, some completed but not fully finished, leave them and start 111 new ones?
Interestingly, Samson, I have the data here, and with your kind permission, I'll run you through. To the best of my knowledge, President Akufo-Addo commissioned at least 47 hospitals outside Agenda 111 since 2017. And if you allow me, I'll take you through the list of hospitals. I know for those who were not following some of the legacy hospital projects, the President in the last 2 months commissioned about 10 hospitals at a go. And if people were minded to say, these are legacy hospitals, and even some other hospitals that were started by this administration, he made sure to complete them outside Agenda 111. But during the pandemic, the government realized that there were 87 districts without district hospitals, no referral points. In fact, in the Upper East region, 8 districts did not have district hospitals. In the Volta region, 8 districts did not have district hospitals. Upon creation of the new regions, there were no regional hospitals. Even some existing regions like Akufo-Addo and Eastern region and Western region, the state of their regional hospitals were nothing to write home about. So beyond the President trying to complete, you know, he completed the UGMC Phase 2, the VAMED projects, the Eurojet projects, and a whole lot. And if you permit me, from Achiase to Chedie to Tolong to Ashaiman to all those projects, Akontomra, the district hospitals in Akontomra, Bogoso, Lubo, Mpoho, Nsuayem, Wasadunkwao, Weta in the Volta region, Tolong, Sola, Bupe, Bamboy, Swame, Chedie, Sabronum, Drobonso, Manson Kwanta, Emim, Nkwetia, Kwabing in the Tiwa East, Dukrum, Achiase, Jumapo, Ponkatamanso, Sehuasarinso, Ashama Polyclinic, Adenta. In fact, there are so many hospitals, including the famous Fomina in Kumewu. The President completed and commissioned them. But even with all that, we realize that, for instance,
3 Agenda 111 hospitals.
Yes, those are Trede.
We are told that he simply has commissioned buildings. And you know, hospitals are different from buildings.
Samson, It is sad to say that you were asking about my expectations. Of course, I wasn't expecting my own big brother, Honorable Amabua, to be praising the president. I understand the politics of the floor. And especially in times like this, we are in the troll season and the honeymoon season for the incoming president. So for some of us, it is nothing new. But it does not take away from the approach of the Akufo-Addo administration to a holistic reform in our health sector. Look at the medical drone delivery system. I have been to UN and other international platforms that people want to take pages out of Ghana's book as to how a country like Ghana will be able to run one of the largest medical drone delivery systems in the world. I believe for those in the villages who would have died but for a shot of antivenom, or who would have died but for a drop of a pint of blood, they would appreciate some of these interventions. So it does not take away from the fact that even among the 98 that the president said are between 5% and 95% completed, my district in the Upper East region, Garu district, has one of the hospitals that is built, completed. The fact that it is not completed and commissioned is because of equipment and furnishing. But if you go to Garu today...
But those are the things that make a hospital.
So the three that they were able to finish, those were the ones that he commissioned at Bokro in Ahanta West and Kokobing in Ashanti region and Trede in Ashanti region. Okay. I did the production. Right. I have seen the coverage. No one can tell me that you go to Trede today, there is no bed, there is nothing there. But let me take the conversation away from health, especially when we have a female panel. I want to point one thing to you. Samson, I will not be sitting here but for education. And in the year 2005, I almost didn't write SSC because of registration fee of 40 Ghana cedis. Just that, 40 Ghana cedis. And if you look at the available data at the Ghana Education Service and look at what Free SHS has done to gender parity, I think it is fair enough to say that it is one of the best things that has happened to gender courses in Ghana. I'm saying this because the boy-to-girl ratio in SHS at 2017 was said that for every 100 boys in school, there were 64 girls. By the end of 2023, for every 100 boys in SHS, there were 106 girls. And these are facts. I've not changed anything. I've not tagged it.
And it's all because of Free SHS.
It is because the financial barrier was removed, and families who would have been forced to choose who should go said all of you should go and be working through the system. At least you will get the SS certificate.
But do you sincerely think the accurate thing to do is to lump up all those who have gone through SHS within the period and say, but for bringing the free part of it, they would have lost the opportunity of education?
It is important because you look at the data of students at every academic year, the number of students who were in school. And the jump, the number, the jump, they just don't make sense. But for the fact that something substantial have happened. Because the trend...
The narrative suggests that there would have been zero student enrollment.
No, it doesn't. No. I don't think that is the impression we are seeking to create. No. Of course, before Free SHS, there were people in SHS. But we are saying that even at that time, when they had this Cocoa Ball scholarship, a lot of scholarship schemes, there were many people who were saying that the beneficiaries were the children of the same people who were wearing coat and tie, and not the beneficiaries of the cocoa farmers and everybody. And this government said Free SHS has come to remove the bureaucracy in scholarships. It has come to remove the discretion on parents, and then people who have the fiduciary duty over their house girls and house boys to say, you will not go. And it's a decision I have taken.
You know about the Africa Education Watch?
Yes.
They point to what they say is an inaccuracy that the president peddled when he said 5.7 million is the number since 2017 to date. And they tell us about the Education Ministry's own figures that say that there is 3.1 million and not the 5.7. There is also Dr. Peter Pate, who also says that WAEC figures show approximately 4.3 million students sat for BEC between 2017 and 2024. So the president on the figures is wrong.
Okay, first of all, Samson, let me remind you that the president does not conjure figures. Whatever the president has will come from two sources. Either the Ministry of Education that is implementing the free SHS or the Ministry of Finance that is paying for the free SHS. And there was also a trend in 2017 and beyond, where students who had sat home for years, some completed 2013, 2014, 2015, there are even videos and documentaries of people who even had kids. But as soon as free SHS was introduced, they said, let me take advantage of this development and go back to school. So I think that, of course, if there are concerns about reconciliation in respect of figures, legitimately so, we should look at it. But it is not sufficient to say the data should depend on only those who wrote BEC within the period. Right. Especially up north. You will meet a 20-year-old, 25-year-old who is now in the classroom.
I need to go around. I know that there are many areas that you would have liked to speak about, but I need you to clarify a few things. The president said, quote, I inherited a nation plagued by Dumso. Is that accurate?
It is accurate.
No, he inherited a nation where Dumso had been resolved.
No. Dumso was not resolved.
It was resolved.
In fact,
I think we will not debate that.
If you look at Dumso was not resolved. I have heard arguments about the fact that, oh, this power badge was, there was this agreement for this power badge and that badge. And because generation capacity was increased, Dumso was resolved. I was following Honorable Boache Jako when he was at the Energy Ministry. And as late as April 2017, there were conversations and press conferences about government's effort to finally put Dumso behind us. Meaning, even when we came to power in 2017, there was still Dumso.
And from our perspective, admits that there was no Dumso. And what will you say to the finance minister and the government when you were saying at the beginning that there was excess capacity?
That was the argument I was coming to. The New Patriotic Party that I belong to, even before we came to government, have been making one argument since 2012, that Ghana's energy sector challenge is not a capacity challenge. It is a money challenge. We have repeated this narrative over and over again. And in terms of consistency of presentation on our position on developments in the energy sector, I believe we have been more, our side have been more consistent than everyone. We said there are thermal plants. If there is no fuel to power them, if you are unable to honor your obligations to some of these IPPs, they will cut supply. If they cut supply, the energy sector is about a value chain. It's generation, transmission, and distribution. You can generate, but if the transition has challenges, you will suffer. If the distribution has challenges, you will suffer. But our government, although we also added to the continuous capacity improvements or addition to capacity, the government took steps to make sure we honor obligations to IPP so that they can continue to supply. Well, you remember when WAPCO, somewhere in December 2023, just about a year ago, said that because the government was owing them some 19 million, they were cutting supply. We came out to the public and said that there were payment challenges. We've paid 6 million. We are paying additional amount so that they can restore service. And also, finally, something. Before I drop the conversation.
There is fact that by the time the NPP took over in 2017, the lights were on.
Samson,
they were not off.
They were not.
My testimony is that the lights were on.
My testimony was that we were still struggling with
I needed you quickly. What do you say to people who say, which country does the president live in when he says the economy is not broke? Because we are talking about an economy that has suffered, that has a historic, debt burden. Sky-high inflation. One needs more than 15 cedis for a single dollar. So what does he mean when he says the economy is not broke? In fact, he uses the words that he had made the sacrifices that bondholders made, quote, form the basis of revival of the economy. Revival of a healthy economy?
Samson, when we talk about Ghana's economy, it does not have only 3 indicators. I must admit, just as the president did, that inflation or cost of living is a very important indicator. So when we look at an inflation rate of about 23% at the end of November, it is not something we are proud of, and admittedly so. But the conversation around the economy cannot be left with only conversations about inflation. As relevant as inflation are other indicators of economic development. And let me take you through some of them. There is comparative data of Ghana's total GDP that the president or the NPP government inherited of 56 billion US dollars. As the president leaves office, it is estimated that the country's GDP stands at 76 billion US dollars. A difference of about $20 billion during his term of office through industrialization, because we've seen the quarterly growth rate of 2024 and see how industry is contributing to that growth. We cannot say that the president did nothing. If not for anything at all, what he was giving as the country's GDP, he did not send us in recession. Also, there was this trend post-COVID, or even during COVID. The world experienced a recession. Incumbent governments were punished for it. All over the world, not just Africa. In Africa, even incumbent governments that were not toppled became unpopular, like the ANC in South Africa. If it happened to the Tories, if it happened to the Democrats, that's why some of our colleagues will say we were aware that globally, the kind of hardships that some of these global challenges have brought on the world and the recession that the world order has gone through, is said that people are really dealing with real-time hardships. But for incumbent governments, your responsibility is not to join the rants. So sometimes when people are ranting and you are also not ranting, it's as if you are tone deaf. But the moment you are given the power and authority, yours is to provide solutions and walk people through what you are doing. So it may not be as smooth and interesting a conversation, but this government is saying there is a track record of how governments spend in election year and the deficit that they record, just as they recorded in 2016 over 6%. But in our 2024 election year, we made sure we did not saddle the country with such figures. Okay. The government is saying that, yes, we have a situation whereby the energy sector is still having some debts, but this is what we inherited. And with the projections that were given, that the energy sector debt is estimated to go beyond 12.5 billion, because of our efforts, we are at where we took off from. And at least,
2.5.
Yes, and comparatively, and in all honesty, every well-meaning Ghanaian will agree with me that the power situation under President Akufo-Addo was better than the power situation under former President Mahama.
All right. The question is, whatever the circumstance of the circumstance, knowing what the economy is, should the president be saying the economy is not broke? An economy that has suffered junk status rating, an economy that has seen thousands of its citizens, even in the middle class, pushed into poverty. We take a quick break. When we return, we hear from Professor Akosua Admakwa-Ampofo. We hear from Dr. Akufo-Addo and also Joyce Bawah-Muktari. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile. You're welcome back. I guess in the studio for this special edition to begin the new year, Fatimatu Abubakar, Angela Dwamna-Boaje, Professor Akosua Admakwa-Ampofo, Joyce Bawah-Muktari, and Esther Ofe-Aboagye. And just in case you didn't join us early enough, I believe you will join the very many people like Ansaki who say this is a wonderful panel. They want to enjoy this very often. Hanan Confidence Abdul says this is an empowering 10 and is thanking Newsfile for the assemblage of what he says are these beautiful and powerful female voices. And he says today's show is a celebration of brilliance, balance, and bold perspective. Christabel Dazi of the World Bank says this is excellent way to start the new year. Solid panelist. We can do it if we want to. Hashtag representation matters. Mercy Ejabing of the Alliance for Women in Media says this is lit. Such skill, talent, and brains and wit. And Yaira Akufo-Addo, that's my University of Ghana English course mate and senior at the bar. She's a bold, diligent lawyer. She joins thought leaders like Noel Falong and many others who say they are super excited about today's edition. Clara Berry Kasati, thank you. I've seen your comment. And all of you joining us, and happy, thank you, and I hope you are enjoying it. Let's go straight to Professor Akufo-Addo of the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. You know her just too well. Blunt speaking. Do you live in the same economy with Akufo-Addo? Let's check. This economy is not broke. Is that what you know?
Thanks, Samson, and thanks to all your listeners and viewers who've given us all these thumbs up. We appreciate you. And I want to also say I admire Fatih for her presentation. And say that if she was working for me, I would be happy to have somebody like that speak on my behalf. However, I'm not as excited as she was. I think I counted her using the word excited 3 times. I'm not excited. And Samson, you said that I'm blunt speaking. And since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to shoot straight from the hips. And also because we have an incoming government, and I think that we should expunge the word honeymoon from our lexicon. There's no time for honeymoons. They've got to hit the road running. And so all that they hear us say is for them to take action. There's no time for honeymoon. So if we're complaining about where we've been, it's because we want them to take us out of where we've been. So no time for that. Okay. Economy, no, I'm not living in the same economy, right? And I feel very sad when I hear, I have actually heard young people tell me that they do not plan to have children now or in the near future because they don't think they can afford to live the kind of lifestyle that will make them and their families comfortable if they have children. That's a very, very sad testimony. My husband and I were doing some math over the holiday period, and even though I'm a retired professor on contract, I retired as a full professor. I've been a full professor for a number of years. The kinds of investments and things that we could do when I was younger, when my salary on paper was about half of what it is now, we will not be able to do that today. We can't. And I'm just grateful that our children have completed, they finished with their higher education, they are living their lives, and we are not responsible for them. We do help other people, as everybody in Ghana does, but many of the kinds of things that we did, I've told myself I would like to have a new car. There are 2 reasons why I can't have one or won't have one. One is that I can't afford it. And 2 is that the way people drive on the streets, every day my car will be in the shop. The people drive big cars, scrape past me with their police escorts, wave their hands at me because I haven't moved fast enough. And please, I hope the NDC is listening. We don't want to see that kind of entitlement on our streets. So the economy, no. It's easy to use statistics. We feel it, right? And as somebody who educates and I teach research methods and we use statistics, we say that if 2 people participate in a survey, you want to have 100 participants in your survey, you get only 2. One says yes, one says no, and then you say 50% of people said yes, 50% said no. You can use statistics to bamboozle us, right? And it's like, wow, 50% sounds great, but you had only 2 people participate in your survey. So those numbers, the GDP and so on, it's really how we live. One of the things the president said was about how much we are earning from gold. Angela said she was disappointed about what was not said about Galamsey. If we are earning all this money from gold, I think the price of gold went up by about 40% last year. We're earning all this money from gold. And yet, again, Angela used the word ecocide, and yet we are killing each other. How much of that money are we going to use for people's health? We hear that in especially the Ashanti region, the cases of renal failure have gone up. How much does it cost for us for those treatments? These new hospitals, are they going to be able to do that? So please, right? Let me also move quickly to education, because this is where I'm connected. There are a number of things that are just heartbreaking. We can send people to school, but if they are functionally literate, it doesn't mean a thing. They go through the system, they come out. We receive them at the higher level, right? That's when you would think that they could string a sentence together and spell. And we are seeing students who make it through who are functionally illiterate. So what is the point of sending them to school? Apparently, and anyone can correct me, the school feeding that is given at the SHS level at the moment, is it 1 CD 50 pesos? Did it go up? I don't know. Right now, a ball of kenke, and the 1 CD 50 pesos is for a day. A ball of kenke is between 4 and 5 CDs. So in other words, 4 or 3 children will share 1 ball of kenke for the whole day in school, right? What does that mean for the parents who are sending their children into these schools? We know, the rest of us, we are subsidizing the free SHS. And yet, PTAs are not allowed to talk about this. Old boys and old girls are not allowed to say how much they are investing in the schools. Principals are not allowed to say how much money they need, because if they do so, they are disgracing the government. Let's be real. Free SHS is being subsidized by Ghanaian taxpayers, and it's not making its way into the statistics. I know parents who have to go to school every weekend to take food to their kids, but have to take enough food for 5 or 6 children, so that children whose parents cannot afford to do this can enjoy from the parents who are able to do this for their children. WASSCE results are late. I'm sitting right now. We are wondering when we are going to admit our first-year students. We are told that government owes the West African Exams Council. So if we've got all these amazing figures for revenues, why haven't we paid? Why do we still have to wait? Why does our academic year have to get messed up? What about children who want to study in other parts of the world, who cannot go, and in fact, who will not go because they do not have their results? And I want to serve notice to the NDC, because Samson, you've assured me they are listening. I heard the incoming president say that first year in education at the university is also going to be free, or words to that effect.
Yeah, that's correct.
Unless he is planning to provide that money to the universities, and we know that the subsidies and what government pays to universities right now, it's basically our salaries, right? So where are the universities expected to get the money from to take care of these millions of students who are going to enter into our enclaves for higher education? We also, Fatim mentioned the numbers of female students, and it's great. It's great to have a ratio that is improving female participation. Sexual harassment is a major issue in our secondary. Those who do research in the schools, both SHS and JHS, major issue is sexual harassment, rape. These cases are brushed under the carpet. We are not allowed to talk about them. They go to the stations. The majority of those cases do not end up anywhere. They are settled out of court. Pastors come and beg. We ask people, they give you a little bit of money to pay you for what has happened to your daughter and sometimes also your son. Those issues are not being dealt with in the educational sector. And I can't say that in higher education it is not also happening. It is happening there. But we need the resources and we need the boldness as a country to confront these issues. Let me say something also about healthcare, right? We had we are up till today, we are still collecting COVID levy. I go somewhere, I look at how much I'm paying in taxes, NHIS, tourism tax, COVID levy, and so on. And till today, we do not know how much money Frontiers made as a company. I read somewhere that government got about 6.4 million in 2021 or 2020, and that Frontiers made 86 point something million. I wrote those figures down, right? How is one company making so much money and government is not earning not even a fraction of what a company makes? So when we are sitting back as cynics and we say, well, that money that Frontiers made is just being distributed among party faithfuls who enabled Frontiers to be sole selected for this job, what does that mean for the health sector? Where is that money going? What has it done? You've got hospitals. Samson, you talked about commissioning. Are we going to get the healthcare personnel to work there? We always hear months, people have been posted, nurses, lab technicians, they have not been paid. Mm-hmm. Where is the money going? We can't just have a building and it's not staffed with people. And when the people are there, do you incentivize them? Do you make them feel, I'm so proud to be working in this area? Do you think beyond the box and say, okay, I'm sending people to any of that long list of hospitals that Fatih mentioned? Will there be housing for them? Will there be a school for their children to go to? Or are they all going to run back to Accra? Let me say one last thing on Galamsey so that, and COVID. Both COVID and Galamsey, and I was really disappointed to hear that the president say that people have jumped on the bandwagon late in life of the, of this Galamsey menace that we are having to deal with. There are so many people, individuals and organizations. There's Eco-Conscious Citizen, which is an environmental CSO. They have been talking about this for the longest time. We can't forget Erastus Donko and all that he has gone through, and journalists who were, fighting against Galamsey long ago. And in fact, this started under the NDC government. And Akufo-Addo promised that when he comes, he's going to deal with it. So he inherited a government from a previous government where already this kind of social activism was occurring. The Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, of which I'm a fellow, has done numerous position papers, policy suggestions. Yeah. I am not that any of that information went anywhere or that anything was done with it in terms of policy. And we are sitting here, and I would have expected, given the civil action that took place in the latter part of the year, people went on strike. UTAG went on strike. I am a member of UTAG because we said we cannot understand how one would have a law that allows mining in forest reserves. We are a country in the sub-region that has among the lowest proportion of forests. And yet we like hailing our greatness. We do not. We know that we need the forests for our climate. We need it for our water. We need it for our livelihoods. We need it for our food. Galamsey is not just robbing us of clean water. It is robbing us of clean food. And that one, if you see brown water coming from your tap, think that it is poisoned. Or if you live near a river and you see brown water, you know that it is harmful. You may not know how many chemicals are in that water, but you definitely know it. When you are eating your contobre or your cocoyam, you don't know if there's cyanide that is around it. And I was really expecting that if the NPP government has not, I don't know if I should use the word able, has not been sufficiently willing to deal with this, in my view, at least some prescriptions for what could have been done, some apology to us that this hasn't happened, and some prescriptions for what the incoming government would do. One of the things that I find very painful in leadership generally, in many leaders generally, is a failure to acknowledge our pain and our hardship. Just a word, Ghanaians, it's been really, really tough. We acknowledge that we haven't done what we should have done. Tell us the wonderful things. We can feel the pain. And they will then blame their predecessors for, and I don't want to hear this with President Mahama, that he came, he inherited this, and that's why he can't do that, and Ghanaians are complaining. Yes, we will complain. That is why, let's give some statistics that everybody is aware of. When the NDC won the election when the NPP won the election in 2020, they won with 6.7 million voters, roughly. Today, the NDC has won with 6.3 million, and they lost with 6.2 million in 2020. So they have added 1 million voters per in order to win. This is
100,000 voters.
100,000 voters, I'm sorry, to win. A little over 100,000 voters to win. This is not a huge victory for them. They won because a lot of people did not go out to vote. I'm told that the voting population was about 61%, and last time it was 79%. About 20% of our population did not go out and vote. And a lot of young people that I have spoken to, not only in Accra, refused to go and vote.
And they say that is a vote of no confidence in Akufo-Addo.
Exactly. And so the incoming government should take note that it was not because everybody was like, yay, we are now so happy to have the NDC. They were just fed up with the NPP. And so I am expecting that this incoming government, the issues that we are talking about today, education, healthcare, the mining sector, all of these, the social protection, every day, yes, Angela talked about it. We talk about NHIS. What about children? What about the elderly? What about the disabled? What are we doing for them? Ministers pass. We had a former Minister of Gender and Social Protection who opened her mouth to say that she was not aware of the number of children on the streets who had come from other parts of Africa, or that there were children on the streets because of, people who could not pay their school fees. How can you be a minister and not be aware of the hardship that is going on in this country? What kind of policies are we putting in place for the least and the most vulnerable? That's how we measure the success of our country. It's not about the figures. It's not about how much gold we are earning. It's not about how much money we are earning. How well are the least, the most vulnerable? What are we doing for them? Do we care about them? We just drive past them. We do not care. It's a rainy day. There are puddles on the street. Somebody's by the side of the street begging. You are driving in your V8. You've got tinted glasses. You don't give a damn, excuse my language. And then you zoom past them. You don't even think that as a political appointee, what can I do? What, as an MP, can I say when I get into Parliament? And we can talk about the MPs. I'm sure we'll come to that with the ex gratia. What can I do to change something within the 4 or 8 years that I'm in office, or 12, or whatever it may end up being, for some of these people who are suffering the most? There is no point sending everybody if they are not going. There is no point sending them to school if they cannot read and write. In fact, they would have better served learning a trade and immediately earning an income than postponing their earning of an income for several years only to end up with nothing. So let me end it there.
Okay,
Samson. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. And I think we'll do it this way. We'll hear from Joyce before we go to Dr. Akufo-Addo, because I suspect there will be the need for a moderating influence. Yes, Joyce, what were your highlights?
Oh, well, very, very, very disappointing, totally disappointing. And let me confess that listening to Dr. Ampofu, I think in many ways she actually literally, shares very similar sentiments as I have. And of course, you heard Fatih and I, when we took a short break, I told her that this is literally a president in denial, a government in denial, outgoing appointees in denial. All the lists of persons she mentioned, the list of communities, the list of constituencies, literally had an opportunity to share their views about this administration led by President Akufo-Addo. And Hajia Fatima, Ghanaians have told you that it is the insensitivity of your government that actually led to the protests against your administration, more than anything. Yesterday, I listened to President Adodankwa Akufo-Addo, to my utter disappointment. I didn't hear a shred of regret, a modicum of sadness, a touch of respect for those who went out there to elect him into office in 2016. The very same people who endorsed his presidency did not get what they were expecting yesterday. A touch of regret, just maybe, would probably have done a fantastic job preserving a certain image of a man who said very proudly that his biggest moment must have been to serve Ghanaians as president. He is over 80. It means that at the time when he took the mantle of leadership, he was above 70 years old. And so must know that all of us were expecting a touch of humility at last in the final embers, when he could no longer speak to Ghana beyond aid, when he could no longer even boast about the almost 1 million individuals who elected him into office, when he couldn't even boast about the fact that in one fell swoop, the MPP lost almost all of the parliamentary seats in Ghana, giving the NDC well above 182 seats. My sister, sometimes, no matter the circumstances, it is also a mark of leadership to admit to your own feelings that in some cases, we probably could have done better. Short of that, anything else yesterday for me was a complete and utter disappointment. And it was actually in the final hours as they left when I saw for the very first time our mother and First Lady, our beautiful Rebecca, express her frustrations in the way she did after 8 years of stoicism and silence, even in the face of the most frustrating criticisms. It summed it up for me that yes, if President Akufo-Addo had even expressed a shred of responsibility for the MPP's loss by a wide margin of 57.7% in one election, maybe Madam would have been a touch more relaxed and taken Honorable Boa's comments in good faith, because they summed up what every single Ghanaian citizen was thinking. Fati, I would look at it from the perspective of the economy first. People are starving. Citizens are hungry. Let's thank God that, yes, you and I and probably Samson share a common history, that because of where we come from, as third-generation northern children, education indeed is the reason why we are here today. But what we should not forget is that as we sit here, we have members of our extended families across the country who still sleep on an empty stomach. I have an aunt in Katamanto who's been selling yams there since I was born. So I feel and I understand what it means to go to school, Samson, and have absolutely no education. There's a difference. And remember that in terms of gender parity, this was achieved as far back as 2015. You can cross-check, where we had actually primed the girl child to the point where the boy children were now being left behind at the primary level. So naturally, these were the same kids that fed into the senior high school system. That is also fact. And then you come and look at the numbers. President Akufo-Addo spoke about 5.7 million children in tertiary education. It's a lie, factually inaccurate and incorrect. But certainly it is still the highest selling point. So I'll continue to exhibit this huge grandiosity around this policy, because for him, really, his legacy is indeed in tatters. And Angela said it. Maybe years later, who knows, we might look on it very fairly. But as we speak today, and Dr. Adomako has said it, look at the number of children who are falling out, dropping out, who are receiving an education but are not educated. And Samson, when you look at the statistics, in terms of even entry points, 2013 to 2022, this is a very reliable education source. When you want research, you go there. 2013...
So what's the source of that?
This is the Statistica.
Okay.
Largely, for any education information, that's where you go to. 2013, we had 68.58. 2014, 63.59. I won't bore you. So it's in the 60s right up to 2018. 19, when we had actually introduced this, it comes to 70.61. Today, in 2022, 2 years ago, 76.78. So in terms of enrollment, in terms of numbers, and Doctor is right, let's not use figures as a way of camouflaging what the reality is.
This sounds to you like a natural ascendancy.
And everybody has said it. You know, look, poor people pride themselves on giving their children an education. It is why our grandmothers and our mothers will sell their last fabric to take their children to school. So when you come and say, let me augment what you already believe is the only way out of poverty, why not? There will be a certain response. But Samson, will that response give you employment? Will that response make you like all of us here today? Will that response give you the life that we are experiencing, largely because of education, not money? Let's never lose sight of what history has done for us as a people. And I am happy that even on this education issue, yesterday, many individuals fact-check you guys on everything you said. there is another thing that I can also speak to in terms of what happened even between when you came into government and now, for example. So you look at it very closely and then you ask yourself, what really is the issue about what our president wants to tell us, first and foremost? What is he trying to tell us, Samson? I want to understand that first and foremost, because beyond my disappointment is also the fact that this is a free SHS enrollment figures from 2017 to 2024. In 2018, they were 362,000. 2019, 432,000. 2020, 404,000, right up to today. So you see, the numbers really don't speak to what the reality is on the ground. Have you seen some of the infrastructure? Have you seen some of these teachers, the quality of teaching, that they have no textbooks, that today there is no curriculum? And I say, Fatih, the places you mentioned, all those communities voted against the MPP MP and voted against your presidential candidate for good reason. That the reality on the ground is that nobody feels what you guys feel. And we are not actually going to accept being told barefaced lies. What happened yesterday was a grand deception to try and save face when there was actually no need. And like I said, Auntie Rebecca's reaction at the end of it spoke volumes. We are all women, and we know when we are frustrated how we can behave. So let's not put premium on this thing. As for poverty, you and I probably know it better than most. We've all experienced it. But for education, you probably will never make it to this level. Just a little aside, because you have reference to the First Lady's, outburst, as we understand, at Emmanuel Akufo-Addo for what he had to say. The Egyptians you see today, you see them no more tomorrow. Reminding Akufo-Addo of the promise of a cathedral which has not happened, reminding him of the poverty situation, among other things. She may have forgotten about the fact that in Parliament, by the Constitution, they enjoy a certain freedom, parliamentary privilege and freedom of debate. And they also have a way that they like to have a way they... But does fairness not require that there ought not be a rounded condemnation of Akufo-Addo's regime? Samson, each time I hear the statement, my heart goes very, very soft. And then even my voice will always change. How much fairness did Akufo-Addo offer to his predecessors? Did he ever express any modicum of support for his predecessors? Did he ever say that difficult as the education terrain is, please join me, let's decide whether or not we should do this way or go about it that way? You heard many people speak to the fact that there was a certain silence, that even Charles could not speak out, that old school associations dared not criticize, that headmasters and headmistress wouldn't dare, because as soon as you do, you'll be suspended, sacked, or completely rusticated. This is what we have to deal with. Secondly, fairness will also demand that if the economy is in shambles, that in all fairness, you acknowledge that you have literally mismanaged the economy for keeping your cousin as finance minister way beyond his welcome. And indeed, all the transactions that took place, who were the biggest beneficiaries? Go and check. The next thing is that fairness is also that people are hungry, my brother. That beyond free senior high schools, the reality of the fact that food is expensive. That for the first time under your watch, Ghanaians experience food inflation of a kind never seen before. I know a family that was in the Upper East region, for example. They couldn't even buy maize because they are now these unscrupulous people who are going there with off-taker arrangements and buying whatever grains are available for storage and to other countries. This is a fact. You can cross-check. And we have a president in Ghana and for 8 years. My sister Fatima, you are a young woman like me. You are a woman from the north. You know what hunger is in our areas. In the Upper East, you lost all the seats except one. Why do you think that happened? Because people are hungry. So you constructed hospitals. You've listed them. I have an even taller list of the number of hospitals. Most of the ones you mentioned were hospitals, something you know, left behind by the previous administration. Let me finish. Thank you. So let me finish. So you know that there is no precedent, and I'm speaking still to fairness, Samson, who would come into office and not attempt to build a hospital and not attempt to improve our health infrastructure. When did you ever hear President Akufo-Addo, in his whole 8 years, give any fair comment about any of his predecessors, not once. Secondly, let's speak about health. Health is wealth. The National Health Insurance, go there and see the numbers of employees, all feeding fat, taxpayer money. The persons who are supposed to benefit from National Health Insurance, Samson, are mostly from the poorest parts of Ghana. You heard the Afrobarometer report that Ghanaians have gotten multi-dimensionally poorer over the last 8 years, right up to the Western region. Nobody was actually, spared, all of us. The next thing we want to speak to is that talking about health, we were in Wenchi, where there was a hospital that was the only one serving them, where President Akufo-Addo told them at a deadline, you, Mayaja, you were there, that because they didn't vote for his parliamentary candidates, that is why development has not come there. The next thing is what happened in the Volta region regarding an E-block, where a chief was told openly, brazenly, by a president of Ghana that you did not vote well, so you will not get development. So when it comes to hunger too, the same way that people were hungry and yet we refused to give them food is why they voted en masse against you. Then talking about hospital, there's one in Salaga, in my own community. Beautiful hospital facility is still sitting there. And lively, you didn't mention it in your list. And then you come all the way to Upper West region. It took a protest before that facility was opened. President Akufo-Addo never expressed fairness to anybody or even expressed any respect for any other person. You see, it is why I believe that God works in the affairs of men. And beyond the lies we tell, beyond the propaganda, beyond all the pretense of a platform like Parliament where you can say anything and maybe even get away with it, is the fact that Ghanaians went to a referendum on December 07 and scored the MPP F by voting them out, both their candidates, president and vice, and of course the PCs, for good reason. Never lose sight of that. The third thing I want to speak about is that what? You left behind 8 billion. The public debt today stands at close to 800 billion, Samson. We have the debts of the DDEPs that are yet to be paid. We have the public debts, the international debts that have been postponed to 2026, for example, and 2028, that are yet to be fulfilled. In 2016, when Mr. Mahama was leaving, similarly, funny enough, the figures even rhyme. There was 6.2 billion in the kitty, plus 10 and Sankofa oil wells. Indeed, where are those investors today? ENI, ExxonMobil. Recently, there's another award against the government of Ghana for abrogating these very important contracts. Mr. Mahama has a way that he puts it, and that by now, we should be pumping oil like no man's business. But because of family feuds and clanism, all these investors have left. Why are we not depending on gas, Samson, more than crude oil? It is always about procurement for this administration, and it is a procurement sense that has led them to this failure that they are experiencing today. But you see, even in the face of failure, they refuse to admit, even for a second, that let's take responsibility at least for the fact that we failed to deliver on a better economy for the good people of Ghana, that we failed to deliver on Agenda 111. Go back to the tapes of when this subject matter was introduced. You see, the issue is not about what we're trying to do or not trying to do. Samson, there can be no president under the Fourth Republic who didn't focus on infrastructure, be it in education, be it in health, be it in roads, name it, than Mr. John Mahama. And you can check, even Google will tell you that this is a president who tried to close the infrastructure deficit. But he got no credit and got no fairness from his successor. I think the biggest time that Mr. Akufo-Addo has ever even acknowledged John Mahama in any positive light was in his last paragraph yesterday, where he actually expressed congratulations to him for a resounding victory in the election. We have humbled him and taught him a lesson that mediocrity will not be tolerated. And Dr. Ademago, I agree with you. You know me very well. I have told Mr. Mahama, we must sit up. We must do better. We must offer Ghanaians what it is they are asking for. Figures don't put food on the table. Statistics are to guide us so we can introduce policies to feed and improve our lives. If planting for food and jobs took 2.8 billion, and yet people were suffering food inflation, then something is wrong with the policy. Something is wrong with the data. Something is wrong with the implementation. And somebody must be checking. That is what we expect. And then you come down to talk about monies and what you left. Really? Where are the better managers of the economy? The dollar is at 17 cedis and climbing. Thank God we have a new government in place. So at least the last few weeks, there's been some consistency because naturally, you are not wasting our money anymore. That's all that it is. You know, look, the reality on the ground is that President Akufo-Addo came in with enormous promise in all humility.
A lot of it.
He rode on the backs of many people, businesses, industries, giant of industry. And I have traveled closely with Mr. Mahama the length and breadth of the world. In every meeting I have sat with ambassadors, high commissioners, name it. Everybody is disappointed in this administration of President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. People expected better. So if you've squandered our expectations, try not to cheat our intelligence. Because I think that today, this last submission of yours is attempting to cheat the intelligence of the good people of Ghana. So you built a hospital. You put nothing in it. You didn't even make it functional. What were you expecting the people to do? To acknowledge the fact that the structure is there and there's nothing in it? You gave me free SHS, but you made sure that the dollar and cedis cannot be managed even in a consistent way. Look at unemployment at 14.7%.
Right.
Look, this campaign that we went into, I went into it with enormous faith and belief. You know me very well. I believed in everything we did and in everything we said. And I tell you every day that as a spokesperson, I've never been sued by anybody because I don't believe in falsehoods. Let's look at the ascertainment of Ghanaians. Don't talk about numbers.
The numbers don't
judge.
As Fatima said and pointed out to us, the president has completed some projects, at least in the health sector, that were started by the Mahama administration. He has made a plea to John Mahama to complete the Agenda 111 hospitals.
Quid pro quo, only because he has failed now, only because he has been humbled now, only because he certainly feels humiliated. When did you ever hear Mr. Akufo-Addo tell you that the E-blocks that were going to serve Ghanaian children, that he was going to work to complete them? They spent the whole 4 years on propaganda about E-block infrastructure and did it until they lost. Go to Bongo, and I always use this example. The Agenda 111 hospital is just 5 minutes from the E-block that they told every citizen of Ghana that those buildings were in bushes and not worthy of people using. Go to Adenta, the school is bursting at its seams. Samson, those kids in those schools, the reasons why you can even implement free SHS up to this point, small as the numbers are.
Will you commend Akufo-Addo for ending the Dagbon situation? What is it will you commend him for?
Oh, you want me to repeat it on air? I told you that the one thing that I have enormous respect for Akufo-Addo for doing is making my sister a full minister for information. She deserves it. And she's
I thought that was just a joke we were having.
No, I'm very serious.
Backroom.
I'm a woman. I take my gender activism.
No, but I'm serious about the question.
I am very serious about what I'm telling you.
In the various sectors, the performance of the NPP administration, what is it, will you say, they did a good job? Perhaps maybe we can also do ABC to improve or continue.
You are putting me to strict proof, Samson. This one, we are not in a court of any jurisdiction of any kind. I say that whole State of the Nation yesterday, for me, was an utter disappointment. I said the only thing that stood out for me was at the tail end, where he at least congratulated the incoming President John Mahama. I think now Akufo-Addo has learned something. It is not easy to manage a country like Ghana with competing interests, a tight budget, struggling to industrialize. He told us 2 years ago that he had constructed 10,800 kilometers of roads. Yesterday it was 12,000. So which is which? Samson, let me put this on record. I, Joyce, respect every individual who becomes president of this country. And in the Fourth Republic, we've had amazing human beings who have led this country because they chose to do so. But let's also admit the failings of the administration, that they failed to deliver on the major promises that they made, that the referendum was the December 07 election, that beyond data and statistics, which is why they even gave them results in February, they were losing and they didn't believe it. They were arguing with the strategists. It's the same thing we are still doing. The reality check, Sister Fati, should be that when we were leaving office, this is a list of everything that was left behind. And I like the way it is summarized. There was a strategic buffer of cash amounts. The Ghana Infrastructure Fund had an accrual of $270 million. The sinking fund had $500 million. The stabilization fund had $300 million. If I start, the list will be endless. Every president inherits something, no matter how small. The challenge is what you do the little that is left for you.
You're happy about the OSP, are you not?
The OSP did a fantastic job, but what was the OSP used to do?
That's the brainchild of Akufo-Addo.
The first OSP told us that Akufo-Addo was even more corrupt than the people he was pursuing. Fact. The second OSP has been hounded till date. Where is he?
I'm still trying to get you to applaud one thing.
You know that it will be difficult for me to find that one thing. And I've told you that in my heart of hearts, I respect every gentleman or lady who stands up to lead this country as president. But I was very disappointed in Mr. Akufo-Addo's administration because even though I am NDC, because of the propaganda and disinformation that was used to attack the former administration, I actually convinced myself that they will do a better job. Samson, remember that corruption was a huge factor, and all of you jumped onto the bandwagon. And I remember my debates with you. In fact, for a while, I stopped coming to Newsfile. And you are my brother. We used to have these exchanges all through. Sometimes you'll even have them here, and I'll question you. Why are you not asking A or B? Look at the matter of PDS, $12 million. Do you know what that can do for Katamanto? Or for the free SHS people that we so boldly talk about who are starving? Secondly, look at the issue to do with the National Cathedral. $58 million. Add Frontiers and how they are receiving COVID tax till date. And I'm delighted that John Mahama has told us that there are a few of these nuisance taxes that he will need Parliament as soon as it is reconvening to immediately take a second look at. Because we must stop paying that COVID tax. You buy papaya, you pay COVID tax. And yet, we were told that COVID tax was to construct and complete Agenda 111.
Okay.
Do you know how much we need to complete
let me go to Esther now.
1.4 billion to finish. So where has he left the 1.4 billion and telling us that he's left behind what? 8 billion. That's woefully inadequate.
You know, there have been problems, and we'll come to deal with those maybe now or subsequently, about how, you know, successive governments, you know, don't continue with what predecessors leave. When it comes to the housing sector, we've had this problem, and it appears it's the Ghanaian who is at the end of the stick, just taking all, you know, the bad development. For example, we can look at Segleme, and it's taking 8 years. It's been left until the campaign. We began to see an attempt to say we want to do something about it after a lot has been left to rot. A similar thing happened. Kufuor leaves, you know, the scene, and you have these affordable housings uncompleted, not ready, and then we begin to look for something else to do all of this Ghanaian taxpayers' money. I need your brief comment on this, because I'll be remiss if I don't bring this up to you, Joyce, before I go to Esther, that the president says that he has been handed a Constitution Review Consultative Committee report, and he is going to present it to the president-elect for consideration. The president has been talking about a legacy, this re-election being a legacy term for him. What will he do about it?
He will immediately kickstart the process, Samson. And that's actually very late coming from President Akufo-Addo. Indeed, he had 8 years, and the lawyer that he is, like I say, I expected more from him. You know, someone tried to tell me when we finished a short while ago that at least the law complex and etc. I said, no, it was started by Professor Mills. That is the truth. And had some installations from John Mahama, and then of course, President Akufo-Addo completed it. So even that one is not something that you can actually completely allow Mr. Akufo-Addo to take credit for.
We were told he started in Akufo-Addo's time as Attorney General.
But as Attorney General, you don't construct projects. You didn't finish. You became president 8 years later. We are still having the same conversation. My brother, Mr. Akufo-Addo, had every right within his own bosom and his knowledge, in the comfort of his presidency, to work on this constitution. And I remember there have been comments even where he's passed that something else needed to be done, if you remember. And it was actually in the course of when they were majority in Parliament that this thing actually failed to see the light of day. But note, that process of a constitutional amendment has become even more important now than before. Ghanaians are completely dissatisfied with the constitutional arrangement this far. Matters to do with Article 71, and when you read the preamble, when you read the intentions of the drafters...
President Mahama says you abolished that.
Absolutely. It is something, because at the time, How big was our population?
It's an entrenched provision, though.
And that is the way, so we will go to referendum. And I believe that a lot of work was done in that regard. You know, it is a report I followed. And in fact, at the time, I even told Mr. Muhammad I would have loved to serve on that committee because it was a matter that because my late father had served in the Constituent Assembly, and I still have some of his notes, written in very beautifully. And so I do know some of the backroom conversations leading to some of the provisions in this. An entrenched clause is simple. What it means is that, look, there is nothing that is entrenched. We now have a 2/3 majority in Parliament. Bring your views. I spoke to Clara yesterday, and Clara is someone that I talk to all the time. Mr. Mahama is committed to this process. But remember, we need the support of the MPP and the citizens of Ghana.
That's right. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Thanks very much for, and we are seeing most of your comments. It appears today, rather than sharing substantive comments on the presentations that our guests are making, all your comments are like this one. What a brilliant panel, and hope we get to see more of this. And I'm reading just too many of that. And this one says, that's Joyce Bauer for you. Outstanding presentation. Most of the comments have just been applauding our guest. Of course, Iraba has said earlier that I like Professor Akufo-Addo Ampofo. She's very open. And Vero had said earlier that she is as blunt as I suggested earlier. She has said that Prof. Akosua is real. Thank you very much. Now, Doc, let's hear you. What were your highlights?
Have you left me anything to say?
What were your highlights?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Like Angela, I was expecting the State of the Nation address to tell me certain things. Well, within the limitations of time, I wasn't sure I was going to get all of that. Perhaps I will need another review to look at and track, a number of initiatives and questions that I had hoped to hear. I'm also listening to all of the discussion, and I'm saying to myself that, in some of the earlier discussions, you had asked me, or in the notes that we shared, about my thinking or what I'm coming out of this experience of.
Right.
And I was thinking that there were a number of missed opportunities for me, in the past 8 years or so. So some of things I would have liked to see happen. But it also provides us with sterling lessons going forward. I think President Mahama, incoming president, has a unique opportunity to leave a legacy, because I think he has nothing to lose. He has nothing to lose to go out and make a definitive difference on a number of fronts. There are major lessons for managing expectations. Because he is also coming on the back of enormous expectations, and he is also coming on the back of a lot of goodwill.
He started talking about the debt in the energy sector and how the situation is dire. And so we need to pray and hope that things will get well.
He should also be aware of the prayer people as well. And I hope my moderator is not listening to this comment that I'm saying. But again, issues around coordination. And also managing the communication by his ministers and also by people in public office. In other countries, ministers don't talk like that. They don't talk by heart like that. You see, there has been too much talking, and we pray that there won't be so much talking. Now to the substantive issues that I picked from the State of the Nation address. I was listening carefully about the issues around chieftaincy resolution and some of the issues that were emerging. And I was asking myself, Why is chieftaincy beginning to pose a problem, apart from the older ones that have to be carefully unpacked and looked at and, resolved sustainably? The president alluded to the fact that we needed to strengthen certain institutions like the Ministry of Chieftaincy and the Peace Council to help to address some of these concerns. We also need to look at the chieftaincy institution itself and its place in our whole governance architecture. I think that we need to pursue that discussion further. I don't think the chieftaincy ministry has been accorded the respect and the place and the clout and the gravitas that is required for it to do this kind of thing. But that is a discussion.
There's another school that wonders whether it is useful anyway.
Whether it's useful anyway, we want to ask. I mean, so long as we intend to have such an institution, then we have to make it work. Because while running through all of my thinking around this whole State of the Nation addresses, all of these achievements have been touted, but are they worth the value of the resources that were expended on it? I mean, if we take the resources, the quantum of resources that have been expended and the result that we see, have we had value for money? We have to do some real...
What's your answer to that?
Anyways, in a number of places, I feel that opportunities have been missed. Opportunities have missed. And I will talk to a few of that later. In that regard, so we have to rethink the whole public administration architecture. We have to rethink the whole public administration architecture. And when he was talking about the addressing corruption and the achievements, he talked about the OSP, the Fiscal Response Anti-Money Laundering Bill, and so on and so forth. What I was thinking was, and of course, he talked about the budgetary support for the accountability institutions. I was thinking that this whole public administration thing has to be properly, we have to think it through. We've been doing all of these things about public sector reform, but we need to look at the whole thing in its entirety. Professor Akufo-Addo made some proposals about strengthening accountability of ministers and, pulling all of this together. And indeed, His Excellency the President has indicated it as a top item in his resetting, 120-day social contract. We have to think through all of this very, very carefully and decide what needs to be done and how. The Ministry of Chieftaincy, is it a priority for us to have a whole entity managing relations with the chiefs? What is the place of the National House of Chiefs in all of this? We need to encourage all of these entities to look at how they can work more efficiently, more effectively, and more in support of a government that we have put in place. A lot of these parties or a lot of these bodies, these institutions, have operated on a very self-interested trajectory. They've looked at what it is they can they can do, where their interests prevail, and then they haven't fed into the larger public good. But I guess I want to talk about the Galamsey issue he's talked about. He talked about the forest plantation strategy and so on, the Green Ghana project. There, I had wanted a bit more discussion about the larger context of climate change management, our environmental management issues, and the initiatives that are there. How have we performed? How are we responding to issues of deforestation, the implications for where the world economy is going and where Ghana fits into all of this? I would have loved to learn a little more about that. The issues around the free SHS and free TVET, I listened with rapt attention. I listened to the fact that there was an indication that new educational standards had been set as to what education institutions should look like. But one thing that has bothered me about all of this is looking at the thing in its entirety. looking at it in its entirety, all these lovely children have gone through free SHS, with or without parental support, with subsidies and so on. But where are they going? It's what I'm saying. The chain, look at the whole chain, going into tertiary education and then giving them prospects of jobs, giving them prospects of being able to go on in life. They've gotten this free education. I'm not even talking about quality or their capacity to participate in the job market. Or then what? Then what? Then what? You see what I'm saying? So that we have not been able to get the then what. Look at the entire chain in its entirety. Because that also led me to listening to the issues around building entrepreneurial capacity and the entrepreneurship ecosystem and so on. There are too many little initiatives. Too many little initiatives, where some of them working in parallel, some of them working at cross purposes and not hanging together. And see, so one very important thing I would want to hear about is how we are going to address the issues of youth development. It is not hanging together. It is not hanging together. There are too many bits and pieces of initiatives, and it's also not decentralized in the system, in the sense that what local level initiatives, I mean, we've got NY youth departments and so on at the assembly level, parts of common fund go to support the youth authority and those institutions. But how are local initiatives for young people taking advantage of their capacities, their energies, and so on, being pulled together? How are they going to be pulled together? Especially if you look at the demographics. I mean, in the sense that about 40% of people, and again, the young people are within that bracket of our population, is within that bracket. And those of us who would be sympathetic to some of the issues he raised are fading out. Akufo-Addo and myself, we are fading out. These are the people you need to keep happy. These are the people you need to make, and they are knowledgeable, they have access to information, they have social media and so on, and they have an opinion. They have an opinion. I have 3 of them in my house. They have major opinions as to they have an opinion on everything. And so we have to get you see, I wanted to hear how we're going to pull all of these initiatives together to be able to give our young people a structured delivery beyond even the implementation of the National Youth Policy, how we're going to give them a structured sense of hope. Not out of the mouth of the next child, I'm going to Japan. The next young person, I'm out. I'm looking for a way to leave this country. How are we going to give them that sense? So I wanted a bit more indication.
That's largely driven by the economic situation.
Indeed, indeed. And even if we could offer them a prospect of hope, the hang in here a little, this and that these are the options that you have. I wanted to hear a little about that. Again, in my own sector, the place of interest two places of interest I was having. I needed to hear something about decentralization and local governance.
He spoke about the regions that were created
and that one, but I didn't hear why the efforts to vote DCEs in sort of truncated.
Yeah, he said it was truncated.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, because his view was that it should be done on political lines, partisan lines.
Yes.
And the other opinion was that it shouldn't be on political lines.
But the discussion should have continued. You see, after the 2020 elections.
So he shouldn't have stopped it.
No, the discussion should have continued.
Okay.
You see what Ghanaians would want. You see what I'm saying? Because after the 2020 elections, civil society tried to pick it up and, have a discussion. What do Ghanaians want?
Right.
I wished that discussion had continued to a certain end. But the total silence was not a good thing. In
CDD did a number of surveys.
Yes, they did.
And the popular view was that people want it non-partisan.
That's right. That's right. I was part of that.
That's the position the president doesn't agree with.
Yes, but you see, you can't agree with everything. You see what I'm saying? There are situations where you make compromises and say, okay, if this is what you want, these are the spaces, the room for maneuver that we can take account of.
So he failed in that area.
So yes, I'm not. In the whole area of decentralization, I wanted more. For instance, there was a major, far-reaching plan, SADA master plan. It was, to me, a very solid document.
Okay.
So we sort of transited into the development authorities. We didn't hear of them again. And for me, that was a major pity, if you like. It was a pity.
Okay.
Another pity for me was the One District, One Factory initiative. I had this amazing dream where the districts would help to identify their potentials, and then the central government would play a facilitating role to help them to get in touch with those who would help them to prepare technical proposals and, do their best, help them to market their potentials and have it invested, and then every district would have a factory. It didn't happen that way. So for me, that was also a major...
The way it was sold, it was almost unthinkable for anybody to be against it.
Yeah.
One district, one factory, one village, one dam.
Yes.
You would think that in 8 years, the industrialization of this country's economy was going to take flight.
Yes. Because...
So that's also another failure for you.
Local economic development. So that for me would have been a fulcrum around which, so that even if central government helps you to initiate one major factory or something, the smaller complementary initiatives, people would pick it up and run with it, that kind of thing. So for me, that was also another missed opportunity.
Okay.
And then I wanted to hear a little more about those kinds of things. Definitely, I had a position on the Constitution. He said there's no perfect Constitution. But he spoke some Latin there, which came to the fact that hastens slowly. But 2011, Professor Fiajo's people put the document there, and so between 2011 and now is about 13 years.
So the new group actually,
yes,
by the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs,
that's right,
that's
right,
have also looked at some of the things that Professor Fiajo's committee proposed.
That's right.
And some of which, because of time,
yes,
there's a need to retweak.
Yes.
And they have presented another report.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that, for me, is something that I would very much like to see going forward on this issue. And you talked about the One Village, One Dam. There were a number of initiatives that were ongoing, small things, but they went upscale. They became islands of excellence, and then time came and then they dissipated. So, well, he can't, you don't expect him to say that he has not done well.
All right.
You don't expect him to say that. But again, it will be necessary for us to take a good hard look at where we are as a nation and move forward.
All right, we'll take a break, return to the disputed constituencies, 4 of them that need to be taken care of. Also, there are the national honors that have attracted a lot of criticism, that they appear to have lost their value, and the brand has been damaged by the manner in which it has been done. People like Akufo-Addo insist that the president should not be conferring national honors on his ministers, and on ministers who have had questionable, conduct and so on. But before I do that, I'm going to ask, because I could see some of you itching to say one thing or the other. Just a minute if you need to do a quick rebut or some response to any of the things that have been said. Clara says, wow, such courage, Professor Adomako. Prince Henry, says that one of the legacies Ghanaians can remember Nana Akufo-Addo led government for is that what? He deceived God about building a cathedral for him. Can we move beyond that? Okay. Al-Hajj Suleiman says that new governments continue what their predecessors left. Don't continue what their predecessors left, because in most cases, such projects are saddled with huge debts, with no dedicated funds to complete them. In reality, if new government would focus on completing previous projects, they would be left with no fiscal space to start their own programs. This is an MPP, guy sending this message. That's difficult to appreciate. The president is appealing to John Mahama to finish the Agenda 111 projects. He says, to resolve the problem, I suggest all projects above a certain threshold be set in law, an act of parliament, which shall spell out a dedicated source fund, completion timelines, etc. There must be punitive aspects to such a law. Well, the proverbial thing, which is actually true to a large extent. People just want their 10% taken quickly, and the rest, they don't follow it. Now, you say that it's time for Joyce to shift gear from campaigning to delivering on the promises made by the NDC. The people who voted for change are watching closely, eager to see the fulfillment of the lofty promises like incorporating private schools into the free SHS program, increase cocoa farmer compensation from 3,000 to 6,000, reduce taxes, and even lower prices for staples like kenke. Okay, thank you. That's too long a message. That's all I can read for now. Yes, so let me hear you quickly. Fati wants to say something briefly. That's under a minute. Yeah,
Samson, just a few points I noted, and I thought I'm in the position to share information.
Very quickly.
So I wanted to use this to do that. In terms of President Akufo-Addo's record of completing legacy projects, just as the gentleman said, you can't do everything. But his record still stands tall as a president who completed most of the legacy projects that were left behind. The e-blocks. The
NDC was left for 8 years.
The NDC completed 29. As of 2022, President Akufo-Addo's government had completed additional 31 e-blocks. In fact, the majority leader then presented this information in Parliament, and it wasn't contested. So I believe if your team checks, they will find that. Okay. Also, I just wanted to share an information with Prof about school feeding. The school feeding program under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection is for basic schools. The one that they were talking about, the 80 pesos in the past, and now moved to 1 CD, 50 pesos. So that is run by Ministry of Gender. The feeding component of free SHS is in two parts. The non-perishable parts is handled by the National Food and Buffer Stock Company, which is supervised by both the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Agric. And the perishable part is the disbursements that are sent to the headmasters to buy like tomatoes and other produce for the schools. There was also this issue about one district, one factory, finally. And I also wanted to share light on it. It is one of the projects of this government that regrettably, I think we didn't sell enough. Not that the factories were not constructed, not that the projects are not there, but the marketing around the program did not go as planned. You agree with me that...
You don't have to sell. If they exist and they are functioning
yes, they
well,
exist. In fact...
people will know and they will sell themselves.
There is a reason why I'm saying it was not sold. I have always referred to this tomato factory that produces Lavans at Suhum. I didn't know it was a one district, one factory initiative. I saw the products on the market, and even as a government appointee, I didn't know it was President Akufo-Addo's legacy. When I went to Central Region for the regional town hall meetings,
from Kasua all the way to Cape Coast, 13 1D, 1F factories completed.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about started though.
No,
completed
Samson,
and
please,
operational.
Let me clarify this. My problem is the process. My problem is the process. I don't have data on how many was completed for what. But my problem was the process. I saw the 1D, 1F as an opportunity to invigorate local economies. But you see, when you do local economic development, it is driven by local initiative to be able to harness local resources and get the multiplier effects into the local economy. This is what I'm saying. So something owned by the locality or based in the locality, employing people from the locality, putting money in the locality so that even attendant industry or economic activities can sprout from there.
Okay, thank you.
So finally, what I am saying is that I believe there is so much that President Akufo-Addo did. Of course, I wasn't expecting my sister to admit to one good thing, but at least she should praise President Akufo-Addo for creating Savannah region. I think the developments that have gone there, she must appreciate. She admitted
to one thing.
No, that one is not relevant.
Your appointment.
It's not relevant. I think there was so much more she admitted. And you know, she has won an election convincingly. So I have to allow her to, her bragging rights there. She's earned it. So everything, the weight, I said, she has won an election. So we leave it at that. But I don't believe it is fair to say President of Akufo-Addo's government, there is a vote of no confidence, failed, blah, blah, blah. The former president
your own people are saying that. Your own people are saying that. Your own people in parliament. Your own people in parliament are saying that there's a vote of no confidence because President Akufo-Addo did not do the right things, including when there was the groundswell of Ghanaian opinion that the Minister for Finance should be removed. He didn't. So the MPs who were involved, Apia Kubi and the rest of them, they have been saying it, that Akufo-Addo lost these elections for the MPP in 2022.
Okay, of course, they have shared opinions. I do not share in that opinion, because I believe it did not matter who was finance minister at the time that we were going to a global economic crisis. Sometimes, even as ministers, if you want projects at your ministry and all that, you are passionate.
The finance minister who told the Ghanaians that we will not go to the IMF. Watch my lips, we won't go. Then we went to the IMF. You know, people have... Anyway, so... at the risk of joining the discussion, as a few of my critics will say, I don't know if Prof and Doc Angela, you want to say anything quickly before we take a break and return to the other issues. Yes, let's hear you.
Yes.
Okay, Angela first.
You're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Right. So one of the things that puzzled me around the economic issues was whether the haircut was the only way. You know, did we have an alternative that the government refused to look at, to examine? Okay. And we look at the impacts that they had on people, and it's still having these rippling effects. So it still, bugs my mind. The other thing is about communication. And the minister just affirmed it, that there were so many things. One day I just drove through atomic energy because there was a lot of traffic. And then I went to pass through the atomic energy school. And I saw all these buildings, which was apparently part of the barracks development. And I was saying, wow, I've lived here for a long time. Where did this sprout from? Apparently, so many things have happened. And the government communicators were totally lost. Some way, somehow, we were not hearing enough from the government communicators. Now, until Richard Ahiaba and then my sister Fatih, who now began to project a lot of things that the government was doing, which was lost to many of us. So much so that even Kweku Bako complained. And commentators who usually, speak on behalf of the government were complaining about government communicators who are not giving them enough information.
Is it about the communication of people's reality?
Well, there is reality, and then there's also the fact that something is going on. It's sad when even Fatih doesn't know that particular tomato product was coming from 1D, 1F. Something was lost in there. Okay. Another thing has to do with the corruption issue, which Akufo-Addo alluded to. Giving money to institutions doesn't necessarily mean they're using the money to prosecute the agenda of anti-corruption. So that link was not actually made and has never been made. And right. I think until there's political will and here to the new Mahama government to even change the legislation we have now to reflect a legislation where the burden of proof is shifted to the one against whom an allegation is made, we are not going anywhere. One of the indicators that I would know that the government is serious about tackling corruption is to change the burden of proof in our legislation. Leanest government by the Mahama government, yes, we're waiting for it. It will need KPIs, it will need TORs, it will need sanctioning, so that people will know that we are indeed coming into a lean and an efficient government, as he is saying.
Thank you.
These just a few of the
Thank you.
things
Let's hear from Prof. Yes, Prof.
Thank you, Samson. Thank you, my sisters. And I want to give a shout out both to Fatih and Joyce. I think they are doing an excellent job on behalf of their parties. Their parties should be proud of them. But sweetness of the... I'm proud of them as younger sisters. Fatih, I think, should be my daughter.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and how knowledgeable they are in what they are sharing. But they have to speak on behalf of their party, so they are doing their job.
Right.
There are kind of two things that I want to say, and I want to land on the question of hope that Esther referred to. But before that, when we're talking, I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about constitutional review. And we can talk about the NPP. Their term has ended. Me, I'm looking forward. And so while I may not be holding my breath because we've had an NDC government before and we've seen certain things that happened and we are praying they will not happen again, I have said that many of us, there's no honeymoon period. They've got to hit the road running. So all the things that Joyce said, I will be playing today's recording back to her. Not a year, in 6 months, to remind her that this is our expectations of the NDC. And to remind them that when in 2018, I think it was, that President Akufo-Addo attempted to begin a process of changing elections at the district level. My understanding was that there was an agreement to begin this process in Parliament. Who were the ones who killed that process? It was the NDC. We might have begun with tinkering with some of these huge appointments that are made by the president. So again, to serve our incoming government notice that we are watching them. The other that I want to say, I'm following up on something that Angela said about accountability and corruption. We expect that every person who is appointed by this incoming government and those who have been elected will declare their assets day one. We want to know how many houses they have, how many cars, how many wives. Women have only one husband, so I can't say how many husbands, how many children. We want to know where those children are in school, who is paying their school fees, so that we don't hear, like we once heard with former President Rawlings, that somebody was paying his children's school fees abroad. We want to know who is paying for what and who has what. Then if suddenly we see you with 7 cars when you had 1 second-hand car, we will know that the corruption is alive and well.
Okay.
And let the note of hope.
Thank you.
Right now, there are a number of people, many people in this country, especially our youth, who have lost hope, who are singing the I For Love Ghana tune, drumming it up and down the alleys. If the incoming government wants to make sure that this country prospers, they have to think about young people. Esther said it. Angela has said it. I think both Joyce and Fatih have alluded to the youth.
All right.
If we don't, rhetoric is cheap. Anybody can talk. What we see happening, and we can see it happening, so It's not everything we have to wait 4, 6, 8 years to see. If there is a change of attitude, if there is a change in the way the people who are appointed position themselves towards us, we don't want to hear the sense of entitlement in people's voices.
Okay.
We don't want people quoting scripture to us. I'm a Christian. I can read my...
All right, thank you, Prof. Right.
And do the wrong. The hope that we can instill in young people will come from the actions, from the honesty, from the integrity, from the kinds of people appointed. If you put a bunch of incompetent people with no experience, we will know from day one that you are not serious.
All right, thank you very much. And you guys have been dealing already with an aspect of the discussion, that is the expectations of the Mahama administration. Andrew Mercy says, without proper planning and good structures, we might end up seeing more fire issues in the future. OK Lelewanu says that arrogance has taken over Akufo-Addo. Just look at what his wife did to Honorable Boa and the speaker. Well, she didn't want to shake hands and spoke about, as we heard, I didn't hear it clearly, that the speaker had sat down and watched people denigrate the husband too often. Well, that place is a place for freedom of speech. That's the peak of it. So I think maybe Auntie Rebecca should be told that in that room, the speaker cannot stifle people. We thank Ghanaians for this huge repudiation. Ruth Jokoto says, I also want to know where Ghana is currently when it comes to climate change. The afforestation Green Ghana project and the energy sector. Kindly let Madam Fatima take us through a bit of this. We can do that another time. Benjamin, I'm coming. Benjamin Kwame says the burial of the dead is a lesson to the living. My hope is that we, the members of the NDC, will learn from the failures of the Akufo-Addo administration, especially in our public utterances. Okay, Ruth, you again, you say, you see how the women are speaking facts without throwing jabs here and there. Very demure, very mindful. Well, you haven't heard the jabs. Blue from Ghana says, this is possibly the best panel you have had in a while. Brilliant submissions by all, but special mention to Professor Akusia and Madam Joyce. Well, thank you. I've seen many of those similar comments, Malco, Afajenu, and all of you. Let me just read a couple of them. This one says, this is an amazing panel and solid steer from you. Thank you. Okay, thank you about that. One's credibility, thank you. I have noted that. Anio Sabote says, really enjoying all the female panel, the all-female panel, proper intellectual discourse, and who feels it knows it kind of banter, hard but respectful. Happy New Year to all of them, especially Angela Jamna-Abuaji. Anio Sabote from Prampam. Prampam said that Auntie Esther, where you left out with the local government system is excessive but unconstitutional powers given to the District Assembly's Common Fund. Okay. Okay, that's noted as well. Independent presidential candidates previously, Jacob Osei-Ebua says that the president at the last SONA really became what Kennedy Japan described him as, a quote, tree stump with no one around him, end quote, or the proverbial despotic king whose clothing was smeared with feces and no one could alert him. How can he be bold to say these things to Ghanaians even after the 7th December elections without appreciating why his government was massively rejected? Jacob Osei-Ebua is the one saying that. Samuel Brian Boabeng is telling me about Samuel Bryan is telling me about Akufo-Addo's legacies. So we will certainly be dealing with the list of all of that. Yakubu Ibn Chamba says this election marks a clean slate for Ghana to rewrite her wrongs and start afresh. Succinct presentations by your panelists. Thank you for those. I'm also proud of Joyce and Fatih, but I'm worried they use all their energy to serve political parties who they know they come only to destroy our country. Okay, has the Galamsey journalist gone to sleep? We need to know the water levels. Let's know about that. And you say the president-elect spokesperson Joyce is marvelous and will remain a master class for the president, an A-plus kind of woman. Thanks for your comments. A big thumbs up to Professor Ampofo for her excellent intervention. Declaration of assets and liabilities by appointees is the way to go to ensure zero tolerance to corruption and impunity. And I'm going to take a break here. And thank you. Yes, we know that they are a stellar group of ladies who have been making the presentations so far. Yes, it may be the best ever in this year. You said this year, but actually this is the new year, and this is the first program. And on your Twitter trends, go and check. Newsfile, as always, almost every Saturday without a fail, is at the top. Yes, Joyce, quickly before we take a break.
You know, look, I love the perspectives from my big sisters. And of course, I told everybody that I was coming here to learn something new. You know, I love Dr. Ampofo's perspectives. But you see, look, I believe that there were a lot of things that we could all have criticized over the last 8 years, okay? I believe the rhetoric really is actually how we articulate what it is we intend to do. So whether we like it or not, there'll be a little bit of that. But yes, I agree with Auntie Esther here that less talk, more action. So please, you know, Akosia, you know that. We have to state our case sometimes. And whether we like it or not, it's actually very, very normal. As the rhetoric, it ain't cheap. It just depends if you can back it with action. And that is really what the difference is. And I hope that we can deliver on that. But I agree with that person. Look, humility, respect for the electorate and the citizens of Ghana. Be honest as much as you want to be. But yes, all of us must eschew arrogance. We ought to eschew arrogance.
Thank you. Thank you.
It can happen to anybody.
That's a good note on which we can take this break. And when we return, we'll hear their views on the disputed, 4 constituencies. The court is going to give a ruling this afternoon, a judgment or a ruling this afternoon on the mandamus application. Will it grant it? Will it refuse it? And will we have a parliament inauguration that will be devoid of what we saw on the 7th of January 2021? The honors, national honors. Who is it in that number that was undeserving? Why the criticism that is this harsh at the president? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, what we do is put Ghana first. And I guess you've been listening to and watching so far and applauding have been Fatima to Abubakar, Angela Dwamena Boaji, Professor Akufo-Addo Ampofo, Joyce Bar Muktari, Esther Ofe Abuaji. And we will now quickly, briefly look at, I think maybe we should start with the national honors and the fallout from those awards. 78 individuals were awarded, and the categories of the awards: Order of the Star and Eagles of Ghana. We had Order of the Star of Ghana, Order of Volta, the Grand Medal, among one other. But people have been unhappy about these honors. The president said to our honorees, Let this recognition inspire you to reach even greater heights. Your contributions have catalyzed and transformed our society, and you embody the very best of Ghana. End quote. Felix Ofosu, is Kwachi Ofosu. He says, he's the MP for Ebura. He says, how does Hawa Kumsin merit a national award? For what exactly? And many people have asked the same question. Johnson Esiedu Nketia, the national chairman of the NDC, says state awards are serious business. They must be reserved for people of distinction, people who have fought for a good cause. If we award state honors to vigilante boys and girls, then that is what we are teaching the youth, that after all, it is all right to pick weapons and shoot at people. You'll be awarded after all. So he is now saying that there ought to be a legally backed committee that should be set up to determine who should earn a national award and not what we have seen. Erastus Asaridonko was happy about being awarded, but he says his joy was incomplete because the Galamsey stories that he has done for which he was recognized, this regime has not paid attention to the things he raised. And finally, Professor Kweku Asare, a legal scholar, he says, presidents appear to use the award more liberally, often to honor their own appointees. This trend risks politicizing what should remain a national celebration of exceptional accomplishments. We should consider establishing an independent body to assess nominations, eliminating the potential for executive influence and maintaining impartiality. Dr. Ofeaboaje, what will be your comment on this? People say the value and the esteem of the awards have been damaged.
Right. Thank you very much. This is an issue that I feel strongly about because I'm still very much uninformed about the process. But if these honors are being given in the name of my country, you know, and giving recognition to people who have contributed to public life, then I, as a citizen of Ghana, must understand the process. I must understand the process. I must understand the criteria. I must understand any review mechanisms that go into it. As at now, if I tell you I totally understand the process that goes on in Ghana, I'll be lying. I'll be lying. In other countries, the process begins with a public process of inviting people who they think have contributed to public life, including, I think in countries like the UK, they use online processes so that you can put your input there, they can draw attention to it, do an investigation, and so on. And then for the various categories of honors that there are specialist committees which are constituted, you know, to look at it, to examine if somebody is being recognized for their contribution to technology, if somebody deserves this category of honor, and so on. So those specialist committees do their work before it gets to a main committee. And that main committee reviews, does the footwork, the whatever merits that there are that should be carried on. And then there can be some endorsement by senior officials, senior government officials, knowledgeable persons in that sector. The head of state's role is merely approving or merely, you see what I'm saying, putting their name under the signature, but having a direct role in the process of, you know, actually selecting and getting rid of and that kind of thing. That person's role is minimal. What is my point? My point is that if an honor is being given in my name for services to my country, then I must have a role to play in that process. There are people that I mean, if you ask me, so-and-so has been honored by Ghana. I'll find it very difficult to say how that person's life has touched on Ghanaian lives or made a difference. There are people if nothing, we have something to learn from what the social, some organizations have done with their corporate social efforts. I mean, if you look at all of these, they ask for nominations and all of those kinds of things. What is my point? We need to reform the entire process. We need to identify critical criteria as to the basis on which people will be awarded. We need to have a clearly investigative process where we can refine and then put up people who are deserving.
Right.
And Ghanaians will nod. And then that way, we will also be able to rid the whole process of the specter of partisanship.
Right.
You know. So somebody asks, why haven't you got an award? And then they will say to you that because you don't belong here or belong there. It should be a thing of the past.
Okay. And Dr. Angela Jomna-Boaji, and we intend to make this brief so we can make a brief comments also about the inauguration of the Parliament before we close, because we have just about some 25 minutes to go. Now, there are some, I've heard Franklin Kojo, I've heard Kwame Sapong-Asiedu, Suleiman Abrahima, collectively, repudiate the process and even suggest that people like Erastus and the others, there are a few others who they say are deserving of the honors, they should have declined as a protest because they have sort of been used to give a semblance of, esteem to what is a bad thing. What do you say?
Well, I don't know if Erastus and Co. would know, prior to them being awarded, what the process is. And I agree with those who talk about the process, like Dr. Esther Ofeagwaje, because the process is as important as the results, okay? I was watching, I was excited to hear about this. This is the first time. And I was excited to see those who were being awarded, the first group of people who were called. Some I didn't know, some I knew, and I was just clapping. Then came the next group of appointees, and I said, oh my goodness. It's like sort of, I don't even know what to say, patting yourself at the back yourself, okay? When people are assessing you, especially in the time that we were in, when the elections had happened, there's a massive vote against you, and you keep awarding appointee after appointee, even if they deserved it. I think that the optics were not good. The underpinnings, the partisanship behind it. So, granted, you wanted to do it. So, is there nobody deserving of an award who expresses an opposite view from yours, even though the person is a citizen? So I questioned why the president would give awards to his own appointees, many of whom had questions, about them and so on and so forth. And the highest award to Dr. Bawumia. Look, nobody doubts that Dr. Bawumia is a very accomplished person, his persona, his everything. I even hear he has an international appointment already. But when you give him the highest award, when he has just lost so massively, you put him to ridicule. I would have wished that Dr. Bawumia would have told the president, I would love to accept an award from you, but this is just not right. Okay, this is not the right time. So this is all I can say about it. I think we need an independent body. Yes.
Yeah, Joyce, now the joke in town has been that some say we are going to protest for Ken Ofori-Atta not being in the list of awardees. Do you appreciate the joke?
I have the next joke.
Yeah, this is about all that I can say. Yeah.
I'm surprised though Auntie Cecilia Dapa wasn't on the list. I'm actually very surprised. My dear Cecilia ought to have made it, judging by the number of people who received these awards. Samson, that's why I was telling Dr. Ampofu that I love that she has these very strong views and her strong perspectives. But certainly, I think that we shouldn't compare peaches and apples. I don't recall Mr. Mahama ever, whether he's in president before, vice president before, or anything, that he will line up these appointees when the economy is in the doldrums, when the cedi is 17 cedis to the dollar, when people are hungry and starving. This was actually a slap in the face of the good people of Ghana, from the president's own award right down to the other government appointees. And that is fact. And I'm happy that even the people couldn't celebrate it. In the past, people would actually be very celebratory of these awards. You see the photographs everywhere. I even read Erastus's write-up. And straight away it was apparent to everybody that this actually fell short of its own expectations. I know people that in the past have actually declined some of these awards. And so I believe that people should be allowed to, in the course of the process, be given, advance notice, be informed, and let them decide whether they really want to receive these awards or not. Personally, on that list, I probably wouldn't have appeared there. That is fact. I mean, look at the history of how Akumsin in Kaswa. I mean, let's be honest, landlady herself. Seriously? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak too much about these things, but look, God will reward us in many, many different ways. And I believe that nothing beats seeing Auntie Esther here. And when I walked in, she was talking about my mom, of all people. To my utmost surprise, I thought, okay, my mom hasn't been outside maybe in almost 20 years. She spent 2 weeks with her. Absolutely. That's life. And that is a life, that is my example. So for me, all these accolades and awards, genuinely, they mean nothing to me.
Okay. Fati, some have said that what the president did was to demonstrate that he had not heard what Ghanaians are saying, and that this ought to have been avoided. Like the entire, occasion ought to have been avoided after this defeat. It's a vote that tells you there's no time to go patting yourself on the back.
Samson, respectfully, I disagree with that position. And also because I have insights as to the process that brought about these awards. I remember somewhere April or May 2024, when I was acting as a representative of the president at our ministry, even before I was sworn in as substantive minister. Letters were written to us from the chief director of the presidency that the president is going to do this national awards and honors. And for the public sector, the ministry should do further distribution to their sector agencies and allies. If they have any nominations, then the ministries will compile them and then submit them for the committee set up at Jubilee House to do the vetting. Personally, I just ministered to my chief director. I did not think that most of the ministers that have so far, those I have spoken to, they didn't nominate themselves. Their names were included in nominations that came from their sector. So I remember very well, you mentioned Erastus. So those whose names have been mentioned, let me start referring to them. He was nominated by the Ghana Journalists Association. And the president felt that it's important, if this is what the GJA wants, it is not presidential awards, it's national awards. It's the states honoring people whose sectors or endeavors have been so good that their peers, people in the space, have decided to award them. So I didn't find anything wrong with that. And the mandate of the president ends on Monday. And even after we lost the election, all the activities that were already listed on our calendar for the year, he still went ahead to complete them, respectfully. I am also very saddened that if they want to make a reference to why the awards shouldn't have happened, they mention Honorable Hawa Kumsin's name. And I am confused about one thing. Is it the case that unanimously we are saying that ministers should not be given national awards or honors?
That's the view. That's the view of someone like Akufo-Addo.
Is that the case that there is no precedent to ministers of states receiving national honors, and President Akufo-Addo is the first president to give awards or honors to his ministers? Secondly, looking at Honorable Hawa Kumsin, in Ghana, I say bad news sells. People will just say, oh, we've heard that she pulled a gun, and then just brand her as somebody. Speaking as a lawyer, respectfully, senior, is pulling a gun a crime in Ghana?
Oh my!
I am asking because three of us are lawyers.
There's a senior before me, so I will not respond to that senior.
Three of us are lawyers, and sometimes it is so sad that something will be said about you. You will be prosecuted in the court of public opinion, and then you will be convicted by the public, and that news will continue to spread without context, without being prosecuted and convicted by a competent court of jurisdiction. But that tag, already you will suffer the defamation, and at every instance, if you're a woman, it's even worse.
Don't you think that the reference to her work would have been better if it was anchored on her supervision of the ambulances?
And that is what I am coming to. I just want
because that's great work that she supervised, and then that was left out.
I wanted to address the elephant in the room. The ministers who were recipients of the awards were in the public sector category. There were several categories. But let me tell you, Honorable Hawa Kumsing is one of the most competent women I have ever come across. And you can check her track record from every sector she has worked in. She went to Ministry of Special Development Initiatives. There were only 55 ambulances in this country. She led the procurement and execution of 307 ambulances and refurbishment of the National Ambulance Services and giving them workshops and everything. She delivered that.
That did not come up. That's my
and
issue.
I'm saying because the processes, most of them were handled behind the scene. Not just that. When she went to the Fisheries Ministry as the sector minister, the historic record of this government in the fisheries sector, having set up 2 of the 4 fishing harbors in the country, Elmina Fishing Harbor, Jamestown Fishing Harbor, during her tenure as Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture, and the establishment of 13 landing beach sites across the coastal belt. Not just that, those of us who know her personally know her to be someone who is strong-willed, who is aggressive when it comes to her work, and will not stop at anything until she gets results.
Okay.
I think that narrative should also be put in context. Right. She was awarded for the category of public sector, having excelled as her work as minister in those public institutions, and was duly nominated by the people she worked with.
All right.
So I think it is only fair. If there is a position that we shouldn't award ministers in this country, they are not deserving of national honors universally. If that is given, I am not so into awards. In fact, those who nominate me for other awards, I barely show up.
All right.
But I mean, if that is the position, fine.
You are like me. You are like me. I reject some of them myself. Let me quickly go to Prof. We need a bit of time so we can make brief comments on the.
We've heard this.
Very quickly.
Yes, Joyce.
Because of something Fati said, this is the members of the 2024 Planning Committee. All of them, except for 1, 2, are all from the presidency.
The presidency.
All of them,
including the secretariat.
Let me finish. I said all of them, including the secretariat. Fati, this is fact. We're not speaking even about conjecture. And let me also state that, you see, you put up a very spirited defense. Just like you guys did with the issues of nepotism and clanism. It is the numbers. How can you award almost 10, 11, 12 ministers in one day? Please, let's not hold brief for wrongdoing. There are ethics too.
Right.
It's very important.
But the fact is that around this table, nobody has mentioned Hawa Kumsing. No, it was someone's comments that I read out.
Comments.
And on social media particularly, the focus is on her, the attack is on her. Yes, so Prof, let's hear you on this. Is it that bad that even people within the government, the vice presidents, the president shouldn't be able to say, you have done well, the country should honor you?
Before I come in, it's not only the ethics, but the optics. In fact, that's the optics.
Okay. Yes, Prof.
She's muted.
Please unmute your mic.
So sorry about that.
Good, you're on.
National award is given for a recognition of excellence, not of doing a good job. It's excellence. We want to promote national values. We want to encourage unity and pride. So we don't want it to be partisan, and I'm not going to go into names. We want it to encourage others to do their best.
Why not go into names? People are asking questions. What is Asansu Boachi's achievement, Abu Jinapo's achievement? What are these that they have achieved? The ministers and deputy ministers, deputy chief of staff, all of that. People are asking questions.
Let me make my fundamental point, and then perhaps it will become clear why I'm not going to go into names, because there are so many names. I could pick. Awards are for national excellence and for recognition. I did some very basic math, and it seemed to me that about 25% of the awardees were ministers, politicos, kind of people. Angela used the word optics. The optics are not good. because it creates a certain perception. And we all know that perception is important. It may be that all of those people are deserving. It may be that half of them are deserving. It may be a quarter of those politicos, as I'm calling them, may be deserving, or they may not be. We don't know. It goes also to the question of process. But there is a potential for bias. There's a potential for a failure to look at performance. And there's a potential for us to, in one fell swoop, decry the entire honor system so that those who are deserving are also painted with the same brush as those who are not deserving. In my view, I wouldn't say that political appointees or ministers should not be awarded, but I would say they should not be awarded under the tenure of the government under whom they served. I remember when President Akufo-Addo, President Kufuor nominated Mr. Ibn Chambers, who was a member of the NDC, as the executive secretary for ECOWAS, and he was voted into office. This is the kind of action that we want to see, that you are so excellent that even a government under whom you did not serve and the people of Ghana also can have a say in nominating you for appointment. Let me say, for being awarded, let me say that awards these days have become highly politicized. It is not only a national award, sadly. We may remember that in 2009, Barack Obama was given a Nobel Prize for Peace. That was the same year he was elected as president. Some of us thought, allow the man to serve as president for a while. Let's see what he can do before you give him such a nomination. The Nobel Prize Committee, it was a bit political. I remember when both Mandela and de Klerk received Nobel Prize in 1993. Some of us thought de Klerk did not deserve it. He was pushed into changing a system of apartheid in South Africa. He didn't wake up one day and say, this is a wicked system, let me change it. So I didn't, he was deserving. In the University of Ghana, I have opened my mouth to complain about certain awards that are given to certain people. So there is a way in which awards can be politicized. But as Esther said, if you have a robust system that allows even ordinary citizens to participate in nomination, then you will have people being more comfortable in the people who are nominated and eventually awarded. And definitely, I would say that people who are serving in government, and definitely not a vice president, as Angela said so eloquently, should not be given such an award by the outgoing president. It really doesn't look good, and it makes us, as some have said, somebody said Erastus shouldn't have accepted his award. Why not? It's a national honor. And as Angela said, he wouldn't know. It's a national honor, unless we are saying that the honors themselves, are to be scrapped. So the incoming government, we do know, and Joyce, I'm not happy with comparisons. We are moving forward. Let's not say, not fair, these ones did this and they did that. We are moving forward. We do not want to see the NDC repeat any of these things. What has happened in the past is 2025. It's a new year. It's an opportunity for us to move forward and not to say the MPP did this. And so don't shout at us. They did 50% harm. We are doing only 33%. And so be kind to us. No, we don't have time for that. We don't have energy for that. We want to move forward and see you guys do a good job, a better job, and give people hope. So,
Prof, what would be your very quick comment on the outstanding Techiman South, Okankwe Central, Ablekuma North, and Tema Central constituency results? Hopefully, that this afternoon the court will rule in about maybe some 10-20 minutes. We'll get to know, but to make sure that in Parliament we don't have fights erupting again.
I don't really fully understand what a mandamus application is. My understanding is that you apply for one when you have no other recourse. I have read a little bit about what the different sides, if I can use that word, have said. The MPP, depending on whose seat is in question, the EC should have done this, the EC should not have done that. I would say that right now we are waiting for the court to say something. Let them say it. Let us hear what they have to say. Let's debate it. We have legal minds, we have constitutional lawyers, let's debate it. But one thing that I would really plead, the Electoral Commission is one of our statutory constitutional bodies. Let us speak about them with respect. We may like or not like a particular electoral commissioner. We may think that somebody else was better. We may think that they could do a better job or didn't do a good enough job or did an amazing job, and we are angry with what other people say. But it's a constitutional body, and I would wish, as Ghanaians, we will speak respectfully about the institution and respectfully about the person who is.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Angela Dwamena-Boagye, can we hear you also in a minute, if you can help me with that? Thank you.
Well, I'm happy that they are slugging it out in court. It means that the two sides are prepared to do the legal thing and be lawful. Lawlessness, we've had enough of that, whether it's coming from NPP or NDC as they take turns in governing this country. Let them slug it out in court, and whatever the court say, let them abide by it. If you don't like it, take it up again and abide by what would happen. And even if it bites you, wait your turn another time. So that's what I have to say on this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akufo-Addo.
I think I agree totally with Angela. I think it's a legal issue and must be addressed that way. I'm just praying that our next parliament will have more to show than the one that went out. These people, there could have been more to show for their tenure.
Okay, thank you. Fatih?
Not much to say, except that whatever the ruling of the court is.
Except that you are hoping that there will be recollation so that the NPP will annex those seats and the NDC guys will be shown the exits.
I think all I want is for the will of the people to prevail.
Okay.
So duly, the people who have voted duly collated by the EC or duly recollated by the EC, whatever the outcome of the application is. I think those who are gazetted and eventually accepted as the legitimate representatives of the people should go to Parliament and be sworn in. This optics about fighting and all that in Parliament, it's not a league that we want Ghana to be on again.
Thank you.
That's my prayer.
Joyce.
Well, I think that everything that I probably would say has already been said. I think straight from here, we'll be going to courts for 12 p.m. Hopefully, whatever directions the court gives, I think we'll all abide by it, you know. Yes, we need to actually ensure that whoever the people have voted for or elected to represent them is a rightful person. I think that's about it, you know, Samson. You know, these things are matters that are not cast in stone. We had the case of Asenov that traveled the length and breadth of that particular parliament. It went on for about 4 good years until we had that very famous by-election. So these are things that we've actually encountered over the years. I think that these are things that also literally enhance our nascent democracy. They allow the court also to come in. They allow the Electoral Commission to set up. I think that we can all, as students of law and politics, welcome the process as it's going on. Of course, Parliament will soon be reconvening. So those who are actually allowed to sit in will be sitting. Those who are going to be able to be registered will be registered. And yes, the courts are there. You can travel probably from now even to the next cycle of Parliament. But
whatever happens, you seem to be comfortable. You have a supermajority, so you are excited about that. And thank you so much. We can't thank you all enough. Fatima Abubakar is Minister for Information and spokesperson for the
expectations of the people of Ghana.
She's also a lawyer. Dr. Angela Dwamena-Boagye is Executive Director, the ACT Foundation, and Chairperson of the Civic Forum Initiative. Also, Professor Akufo-Addo is with the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana. Joyce Ba-Mokhtari is Special Aid and Spokesperson, John Mahama 2024. Dr. Esther Ofe-Aboagye is Chair, Integrated Social Development Center, ISODEC, and many of you will associate with Star Ghana as well. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. My outfit, as always, is by Konati Clothing. Find them and they will make you look good. Have a good afternoon. Thanks for your company.